I babysat my brother on New Year's Eve, but he came home at 4 a.m. drunk and disrespected my time. Am I the asshole for being angry? I am a childless woman of 25 years of age. For weeks my friends and I had been anticipating a New Year's Eve celebration at a rooftop bar with delicious cuisine, live music, and a view of the fireworks. The tickets were previously paid for by me. My brother called 3 days before the new year. He needed a babysitter because he and his wife had been invited to a posh party. He asserted that they had exhausted all other options, including friends, neighbors, and babysitters. He guaranteed me they would return by 1 a.m. and promised to pay me twice. Unwilling to disappoint him, I reluctantly consented in the hopes of catching the last of my party. At 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve, I reached their home. My brother described the children's nighttime routine while they were still in their pajamas. I got the kids to bed around 8:30 p.m., and they departed at 7 p.m. I was thinking about how much fun my friends were having as I browsed through my phone at 10 p.m., while lounging on the couch. I told myself that I could join them in just a few hours. I texted my brother around midnight to see whether they were en route. No answer. I was irritated by 12:30 and attempted to contact him and his wife, but both calls went straight to voicemail. I even tried calling the location but got no response. I was alarmed when I saw a picture of them looking fantastic at the party on social media. I became angry instead of worried. They were ignoring me even though it was obvious they had their phones. I was angry at 2 a.m. I considered phoning their buddies but decided against it to avoid making a disturbance. I also left voicemails and texts. The kids slept peacefully, oblivious to my annoyance. When they finally arrived at 4 a.m., my brother was intoxicated and his wife was not doing much better. I got up and went up to them without saying hello. What the devil? You promised to return at 1 o'clock. How many times have I phoned you, do you know? My brother chuckled and said, calm down. The new year is here. You didn't have anything significant anyhow. I was shocked by his contemptuous demeanor. Did their plans take precedence over mine? Did my time not count? I informed him that I was sick of being treated disrespectfully and that if they were unable to honor my time or fulfill their commitments, I would no longer be able to watch the children. I was being dramatic, he replied, rolling his eyes. They only needed a night and couldn't find anyone, his wife muttered. The following morning, I received a text from my brother warning me that I was being careless. He stated I should be more understanding and that they deserve to enjoy themselves. He even called me selfish, which was absurd considering the circumstances. They mislead me and act as though my time is useless in return for my numerous attempts to assist them. He is now upset with me since I told him I would no longer babysit. He says I'm overreacting and that I'm punishing him and his wife for a single error. But to me, this is a pattern of conduct rather than just something that happens on New Year's Eve. The unwavering belief that I'll do anything to assist them and the total disregard for my personal boundaries. Because I adore my niece and nephew and don't want them to think I'm leaving them, I'm torn. However, I also believe that I must advocate for myself. When will I establish boundaries if not now? Is it my fault that I've decided to stop babysitting? First update. I began to feel as though things were calming down a few weeks after the New Year's Eve disaster. To be honest, it felt like a weight had been taken off my shoulders when I committed to my choice to stop babysitting for my brother. Even though I adore my niece and nephew, I couldn't keep putting myself in situations where I was taken advantage of and treated disrespectfully. It was about respecting myself, setting limits, and appreciating my own time. My phone rang one evening. My brother was the one. I paused before answering, speculating about the topic of the call. He requested me to watch the kids after a clumsy beginning. He claimed that he and his spouse had no one else to turn to and were forced to work late. He expressed regret for the events of New Year's Eve, stating that they had learnt their lesson and that it was an isolated incident. He underlined how much they trusted me with the kids and assured them it wouldn't happen again. He even said that I was the only one who could manage them. Despite my want to believe him, I was unable to do so. They had not only arrived home late on New Year's Eve, but they had also completely disregarded my sentiments, my plans, and my time. I informed him that I couldn't. I clarified that, particularly after being humiliated the last time, I wasn't prepared to be in that situation once again. He did not protest, which surprised me. He didn't exert pressure. He simply hung up. For a brief period, I felt relieved since I had defended myself and believed that was the end of it. However, my phone called once more later that evening. It was my mom this time. I realized right away that she wasn't phoning to catch up when she called from overseas, where she had been residing for a few months. She immediately jumped in and expressed her disappointment at my refusal to assist my brother. She made statements that really resonated with me, such as, You know how hard it is for them to juggle work and kids. If I were there, I'd be happy to take the kids off their hands. She seemed to be attempting to guilt me into agreeing, and my feelings of conflict increased as she spoke. On the one hand, I was aware that I had every right to refuse. I didn't have to intervene each time my brother and his spouse required assistance. On the other side, the idea that my niece and nephew were entangled in it was devastating. I eventually gave in to my mother's persistent demands, which included statements like, "It's just for one night, and you're their family, you have to be there for them." Just for this one time, I promised her I would. With a tone of relief, almost triumph, she thanked me, and I hung up the phone with a mix of resignation and sadness. After work the following day, I arrived at my brother's place. My brother and his wife were on the verge of leaving, and the kids were already home, bouncing around the living room. They hurried left the door after saying only a brief, "Thank you." As if they were simply pleased that I had finally decided to help and didn't want to give me an opportunity to back out. I couldn't help but note how rushed they were. With the kids, I became accustomed to the evening routine: food, playtime, and bedtime. Everything seemed recognizable, almost reassuring in its consistency. As usual, the children were sweet and oblivious to the conflict between their parents and myself. I briefly questioned whether I had overreacted. Perhaps they truly had nowhere else to turn, and I was providing assistance during a time of true need. However, the resentment persisted throughout the night. I enjoyed spending time with the kids, but that wasn't the main focus. It was about how, after everything that had transpired, my brother and his wife had placed me in this predicament once more. I couldn't stop thinking about how my brother laughed when I told him how angry I was on New Year's Eve and how he discounted my sentiments. This was not a single error, rather, it was a pattern of total disregard for me as a human being with a life and obligations of my own. My brother texted me at around 9 p.m. to let me know they would be arriving home a little later than expected. I didn't respond. I remained silent. I simply hung up the phone and concentrated on getting the kids to sleep. Around 9:30, they eventually slept off, and I was left waiting for the door to open while sitting on the couch and watching the clock. They arrived home at midnight, which is somewhat later than I had committed to, but not as late as New Year's Eve. My brother said another halting "thank you" as they walked in, and I walked out without a word. I didn't think I could talk at that point without it becoming a heated debate. I was still apprehensive about the night before when I got up the following morning. All of the resentment I had been attempting to control was rekindled when my brother and his wife arrived home late once more. In addition to feeling used, I also felt torn. Perhaps they arrived at work quite late, perhaps they weren't taking advantage of me again. A part of me wanted to doubt them, but I kept thinking about it. I made some coffee and browsed through my phone before checking social media, which is a popular way to divert my attention from unresolved grievances. I found a tale that one of my brother's friends had posted as I was scrolling. It was an image of a welcoming cafe where people congregate to unwind and enjoy themselves. I didn't give it much thought at first, but then I saw that my brother and his wife were in the picture's backdrop. They appeared completely comfortable as they sat at a table, chatting and sipping drinks. I briefly believed it to be an old photograph, shot weeks or months ago. Then I noticed the timestamp, though. When I was at their house the previous evening, watching their children and wondering why they were getting home so late, I came across the post. They weren't at their jobs. They didn't experience an unforeseen crisis. I once again sacrificed my evening by sitting at their house while they were out having fun because I trusted their justifications. Anger and incredulity were brewing inside of me as I gazed at my phone. What were they able to do? They deceived me once more after all that transpired on New Year's Eve, despite all of the assurances and regrets. Even worse, they tricked me into believing that they needed my assistance because of an emergency. And I was duped once more. For some minutes, I was at a loss for what to do. A part of me wanted to dismiss it, act as though I hadn't noticed anything, and move on. However, my anger increased as I gave it more thought. This was a purposeful act of dishonesty, not only a small white lie. They purposefully chose to employ me since they knew I wouldn't consent to babysit in any other way. As if to make fun of me for thinking they would change, they took advantage of me once more. I was unable to stop. I texted my brother after opening my messaging app to let him know that I had seen the photos and that I was aware of his deceit. Despite my diminutive stature, I didn't hold back. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't gullible and that I wasn't going to ignore it. I waited for an answer while staring at my phone, feeling both anxious and excited. It was like adding salt to an open sore when he eventually responded. He acknowledged it. He claimed they lied since they were aware that I wouldn't have consented to babysit in any other situation. The evidence that my own brother and his wife had no trouble lying to me in order to obtain what they desired was there, in black and white. He made no attempt to explain it or claim that it was a misunderstanding, simply said, it was a premeditated move. Stunned, I sat there. There was nothing to say, and I wasn't even sure how to respond. I was stunned by the blatant insolence. It wasn't due to a breakdown in communication or a conflict in priorities. It was deceit and a total lack of concern for me personally. They viewed me as a convenience, someone they could utilize whenever it was convenient for them, rather than as a member of their family. In an attempt to comprehend what had just transpired, I set my phone aside and gazed out the window. Of course, I was angry, but I felt anguish more than anger. That I could be treated this way by my own brother was painful. It was painful that after repeatedly giving them the benefit of the doubt, I was shown to be mistaken. They took advantage of my trust and betrayed it. The remainder of the day was a blur. I was unable to concentrate on anything else. I repeatedly relived the incident in my mind, recalling all the instances in which I had sacrificed everything for them, putting their demands ahead of my own, only to be met with deceit and manipulation. The pattern was more important than the cafe shot alone. Utter disregard for me as an individual with a life and priorities of my own. I made a choice at the end of the day. I had had enough of babysitting and going above and above for individuals who obviously didn't appreciate me. There was no use in me confronting my brother anymore. He had stated unequivocally that he saw nothing wrong with his behavior. But this time, I was determined to set a real barrier. Put an end to babysitting. No more hurried phone calls. No more feeling guilty about giving up my time and effort for folks who couldn't even be honest with me. I experienced an odd sensation of relief as I sat there thinking about everything. Yes, it hurt, but it was liberating as well. I was at last prioritizing myself, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt that I was acting in the best interests of myself, not my mother or brother. Second update. After a few days, I was trying my best to move on from my brother's treachery, even though I was still hurting. I had no intention of talking to him anymore. No matter how much guilt, manipulation, or slick talk I received, I had already decided that I would never again babysit. It wasn't worthwhile. I had tried to be the helpful, trustworthy sister for far too long, only to be taken advantage of and lied to. I assumed that if the matter didn't resolve itself, it was their fault, not mine. My phone then rang. It was my mother. At first, I didn't give it much thought, thinking it would be a friendly conversation or perhaps another attempt by her to coerce me into assisting my brother. But I knew something wasn't right as soon as I responded. She seemed annoyed, almost accusing, and I instantly prepared myself for whatever was about to happen. She got right into it, claiming that after talking to my brother, he informed her that I hadn't watched the kids that evening. I initially believed I had misheard her. She couldn't be saying what I believed her to be saying, surely. She continued, however, reciting what he had told her, namely that they had hired a nanny since I had declined to assist. My brother reportedly informed her that they intended to keep employing nannies since, in his view, I wasn't good with kids. I was taken entirely by surprise and startled. I had no idea how to interpret what I was hearing. In addition to deceiving me and tricking me into watching the kids that evening, my brother was now lying to our mother about what had transpired. To make things worse, he was making fun of me by suggesting that I couldn't possibly take care of my niece and nephew. He seemed to be trying to twist the story to make himself appear like the victim and was stepping up his disdain, which felt like a slap in the face. Naturally, my mother seemed to believe him. She began to ask, "Why didn't you just lend a hand?" She had obviously accepted his account of events without questioning anything, saying things like, "It's not that hard to watch kids for one evening." To be honest, that was nearly as painful as the falsehoods themselves. I had spent years demonstrating my dependability, my concern for my family, and my willingness to lend a hand whenever necessary. However, she was prepared to disregard all of it because my brother had made up a preposterous tale to hide his identity. I sat there trying to figure out why he would tell such a falsehood. Was it shame, guilt, or just another instance of his avoiding responsibility for his actions? Perhaps he didn't want to tell our mother that he and his spouse had lied to me about having to work late, or that they had gone out to a cafe while I was at home with the kids. Perhaps it was simpler for him to blame me, to make it appear that I was the one who had failed them, than to acknowledge that he had been dishonest. I couldn't believe he would go to such lengths though, whatever of his motivations. It was now more about the idea behind it than it was about myself. He was trying to harm my reputation in our family by lying to our mother. For what purpose? To keep one's face intact? To escape accountability for his deeds? I didn't see how he could defend it to himself, and it felt harsh and petty. I came to the conclusion that there was no use in attempting to tell my mother the truth while she continued to speak. Her decision was already made. He had likely been extremely convincing in his account of events, and I knew my brother. I didn't have the energy to dispute because it would just become a he said, she said situation. In addition, I had the feeling that it wasn't worth anything at all. Perhaps it said more about my mother than it did about me if she was so willing to believe him without hearing my side of the story. I hardly responded, letting her speak. I hung up and sat there looking at my phone when the discussion finally finished. I was exhausted, dejected, and most of all, extremely wounded. It was more than simply the lies. It was about my own brother using me as a scapegoat to hide his inappropriate behavior, and my mother mindlessly supporting it. I repeatedly reenacted the scenario in my mind over the course of the following few days. I reflected on the numerous occasions I had gone above and beyond to support my brother, the sacrifices I had made for him and his family, and the apparent lack of appreciation on his part. I reflected on how my mother had assumed the worst about me without even attempting to get my side of the story, and how she had been so quick to support him. And the more I gave it more thought, the more I saw that this went beyond what had just transpired. My brother was always the golden child, who could do no wrong, and I was supposed to take the fall for it. It was about a pattern, a dynamic that had existed for years. I briefly contemplated going up to my brother, confronting him, exposing his deception, and requesting an explanation. However, that idea appeared less tempting the more I considered it. What would it achieve? He had previously demonstrated his unwillingness to accept accountability for his deeds. To confront him would just result in more manipulation, more falsehoods, and more excuses. To be honest, I didn't require such negativity in my life. I made the decision to stand back instead. I began concentrating on myself, stopped talking to my mother about the problem, and stopped returning my brother's calls. It wasn't simple. A part of me was concerned about how my connection with my niece and nephew could be impacted by the friction in my family, which I detested. However, I also realized that I couldn't continue to put myself in precarious circumstances where I was treated disrespectfully and taken advantage of. Ultimately, I understood that establishing boundaries was about protecting myself, not about punishing others. It was about not allowing the behavior of others to determine my value as a person. And although it was painful to take a step back, it was also freeing to prioritize myself at last. Third update: I avoided my mother and brother in the weeks and months that followed. Although it was a difficult choice, it was essential. I came to the realization that I needed time to recover and take care of myself after everything that had transpired. I made the decision to leave it all because the ongoing drama, deception, and disrespect had worn me down. Restoring my feeling of self-worth and establishing a life where I felt appreciated and respected were more important than merely establishing boundaries. I devoted all of my time to my career and interests throughout this period. I spent more time with friends, who never made me feel like I was asking too much simply for being there and who always gave me unwavering support. In addition to trying new things I had been putting off for years, like joining a local book club and taking up yoga, I began to accept social invitations more frequently. I was able to find who I was outside of the family dynamics that had taken up so much of my energy thanks to these seminars. I first met my boyfriend on one of these outings with pals. I never would have imagined how he would alter my life. We first met at a small get-together at the home of a mutual acquaintance. I wasn't really excited to go at first since I was still dealing with the emotional fallout from everything that had happened to my family. However, my pals were correct when they said it would benefit me. I met him through a friend of a friend. During a card game, we wound up sitting next to each other, and what began as lighthearted teasing over who would win evolved into a meaningful, interesting discussion. He was kind, focused, and sincerely interested in what I was saying. I felt heard and seen for the first time in a long time. We discussed everything from job to favorite movies to hobbies, and at the end of the night, I couldn't recall ever laughing so hard. We began seeing each other on a regular basis after that evening. Initially, it was informal, coffee dates, park walks, and late-night phone conversations that continued into the morning. However, as the weeks passed, it became evident that this was something unique. In ways I didn't realize I needed, he was patient, kind, and encouraging. He reminded me that it's acceptable to put my own needs first, respected my limits, and pushed me to advocate for myself. It was refreshing to spend time with him. He didn't have the manipulation or emotional baggage I was so accustomed to from my family. Rather, he helped me realize that not all relationships need to be stressful or conflictual by bringing stability and optimism into my life. Additionally, he assisted me in managing my feelings toward my family by advising me to handle the matter diplomatically while also reminding me that it was acceptable to leave if it was negatively impacting my mental well-being. My mom let her friend and his kids stay, giving them my room without asking. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay the bills at home and moving in with a friend? My mother and I share a modest but comfortable home. Since she and her husband split up a few years ago, it's just the two of us. To be honest, she suffered as a result of the nasty separation. Seeing her so broken at the moment was difficult, but she eventually started to get better. Even though it was difficult, I always stood by her side as she worked to improve her life. She deserves to be happy, after all. My mother informed me a few months ago that she had made a new friend, who we'll call Jake. It looked so innocent at first. She informed me that they began spending time together after meeting through common friends. It seemed pleasant to me. I was happy that my mom had someone to chat to and enjoy because she had gone through a lot. You know, she seemed lighter. As though she didn't have the same emotional weight as before. Jake seemed like a decent friend to me. I didn't want to pry, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. But as time went on, I saw that they were spending more and more time together. They spent time together, went out to dinner, and he even dropped by a couple of times when I wasn't home. Once more, I didn't give it much thought. I desired for my mother to live her life apart from the house and me. She is free to enjoy herself and go on. I didn't think twice when she told me one day that Jake needed a temporary somewhere to stay since his upstairs neighbors had flooded his flat. "Why don't you let him stay?" I said. "Let's assist him." It seemed like a good idea. Then everything began. I thought Jake would arrive with just one guy and maybe a few suitcases, but he didn't show up. He and his two kids showed up at our door. Two teenagers, ages 13 and 15, a girl and a boy. My mother never mentioned that he would have kids, much less that they would move in with us. Like a deer in headlights, I stood there staring at them. When Jake presented his children, they appeared to be kind enough, but my only thought was, where in hell are they going to sleep? We don't have a large house. The apartment has 2 bedrooms and a tiny kitchen and living area. That's all. My mother and I each have our own room. No guest room is available for use right now. I assumed my mom would have a plan. Perhaps Jake and his children would spend the night in the living room on couches or air mattresses. Naturally, it would be tight, but manageable for a little period of time. However, after showing them around the house, my mother said something that startled me. As if it were no great issue, she pointed to my room and stated, "You'll all be sleeping in her room." "Wait, what?" I said in awe. "My chamber? Every one of them? My privacy? My space? My bed?" I was totally taken aback. She didn't ask me at all. She didn't discuss it with me in advance. She failed to warn me. Nothing. She made the independent decision that I would let these strangers stay in my room. As Jake and his children thanked her and nodded as if everything were usual, I stood there in quiet, trying to take in what had just happened. I was screaming within at the same time. I was finally able to speak to my mother when they went to bring their baggage inside. "What do you mean they're sleeping in my room?" I asked her. "Where do I go?" She pretended it didn't matter. "It won't last long," she said. "You can sleep on the couch," as though it were the best course of action. I was enraged. She made this decision without even consulting me, and I told her that was unfair. "This is my home, and I'm just trying to help a friend in need," she stated dismissively. "When you're older, you'll comprehend." "When I'm older, will you comprehend? I'm not a kid." This was extremely unjust, and I'm old enough to recognize when I'm being treated unfairly. She was asking me to give up my place, my refuge, for an indeterminate amount of time, not just a minor sacrifice. She didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me beforehand. I was too ashamed to even look at Jake and his children when they returned. Even though they had done nothing wrong, I couldn't help but feel bitter. My room, my bed, my closet, everything was going to be taken over by them. As they settled, I tried to avoid them for the remainder of the day. While I sat on the couch, angry, my mom assisted them in moving their belongings into my room. That night, I slept on the couch, and it was awful. There wasn't enough space to spread out, and the cushions were rough. I barely slept at all and woke up with a tight neck. Although Jake's children are adorable, they still occupy a lot of room and are teenagers. They constantly use the restroom when I need it, are noisy, and leave their belongings all over the place. I feel as like I'm a visitor in my own house now, and my room no longer even looks like mine. Jake, too? Although he is courteous, he is too at ease for someone who is only meant to be here momentarily. He spends all of his time in the kitchen, cooking, watching TV, and generally behaving as though he owns the place. I've attempted to express my feelings to my mother, but she keeps ignoring me. She assures me that I need to learn more and that it's only temporary. She even had the audacity to accuse me of selfishness for whining when Jake and his children were having problems. However, I don't believe that wanting a little respect and care in my own house is selfish. Am I mistaken? I'm not sure how long I can put up with this. My mom seems to have forgotten about me entirely in her efforts to assist Jake. I know she wants to help him and cares about him, but at what price? Here, I feel like the victim. This is not just her home, and it used to be my home as well. I have no idea what that is now. Although Jake and his children moved here 3 days ago, it feels like weeks have passed. There was a sudden and overpowering change in the atmosphere of the house. It's difficult to describe, yet it no longer feels like home. Tiptoeing around strangers and avoiding getting in their way makes me feel like the visitor. Jake and his children, however, behave as though they had been here for ages. My mom seems quite content with the patterns they've established, routines that don't involve me. The most difficult night was the first one. As previously stated, I found myself sleeping on the couch because I had nowhere else to go. While I struggled to get by on a lumpy couch in the living room, Jake and his 2 children were well settled in my room, which I had spent years creating as my own. The unfairness of it kept coming to mind. I felt like a zombie by morning after tossing and turning all night. However, I reasoned that it was only transitory and that I would overcome it. Perhaps it won't be as horrible as I fear. It was terrible, to be honest. The house no longer felt at all like it was mine on the 3rd day. Jake's children were all over. As if they owned the house, they dispersed their belongings, shoes, backpacks, chargers, and miscellaneous snacks, all over it. Their juice bottles and cereal boxes littered the kitchen countertops. There was no space for my belongings because the bathroom shelves were piled high with their toiletries. And the roar, the noise, my God. There was no stillness anywhere because of their music, their chatting, and their incessant TV use. I'm a person who cherishes their personal space, so not having one was really annoying me. Jake was no better. He appeared totally comfortable, cooking in the kitchen, relaxing on the couch, and generally settling in. I once returned from a round of errands to find him seated on the couch where I usually sit, eating a sandwich as if he had lived there for years. Even though it was so minor, it truly annoyed me. I no longer even had the couch. In the meantime, my mother was behaving as though nothing was wrong. She was upbeat, talkative, and didn't appear to notice my discomfort. The fact that I was being forced to leave my own house seemed to go unnoticed by her. They also had pals over, which was the cherry on top. The 3rd day was in the afternoon. When I got home from work feeling worn out and ready to pass out on the couch, I discovered that Jake and his children had brought some friends over. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them, adults and teenagers, all chatting, laughing, and munching in the living room. They would prepare a small feast consisting of Coke, snacks, dips, and even some alcoholic beverages. It appeared to be a small gathering. When I went in, nobody bothered to acknowledge me, and I didn't recognize a single face. Feeling alienated in my own house, I stood there for a minute before slipping into the kitchen in silence. That moment struck me more strongly than anything else, and I'm not sure why. Perhaps the awareness that I didn't belong in the house while they did was the cause. Or perhaps it was the fact that my mother was sitting there, laughing and talking to everyone as though nothing was wrong. I felt unnoticeable. That night, I returned to the couch, but I didn't get any sleep. I lay there looking up at the ceiling and wondering how this had happened. I decided the following morning that I could no longer remain there. I couldn't continue to feel alienated in my own house while sleeping on the couch with strangers around me. While Jake and his children were living with us, I was unable to get the solitude, space, and tranquility I required. I so made the decision to temporarily move in with my friend. I knew she wouldn't mind because I'd stayed at her apartment a few times previously and she was always friendly. My mom didn't appear angry when I told her about my idea. She hardly responded at all, in fact. That hurt more than I anticipated when she just answered, "Okay, if that's what you want." I'm not sure what I was expecting, perhaps some recognition that something wasn't right, that she knew why I was leaving, but I didn't get it. Just a okay, and a shrug. It felt unreal packing away my belongings. I only brought a few personal belongings, some clothes, and toiletries. However, I couldn't get rid of the sensation that I was being pushed out even after packing everything into my suitcase. I called this place home. After years of living there, I was going because my mother had chosen to put her buddy and his children above me. What could I do, even though it didn't feel fair? My friend and I had an amazing life together. I was able to breathe for the first time in days. I had a bed of my own, a place of my own, and most importantly, quiet. Being there was 1,000 times better than being at home, and my friend understood and encouraged me. The bills, however, arrived later. Typically, my mother and I split all household expenses, including groceries, internet, and utilities. I was okay with the fact that it was always a shared duty. However, I no longer reside there. I didn't use the internet, water, or electricity. I didn't consume the meal. I told my mother I wasn't going to pay half the expenses when she texted me to remind me of this. She reacted instantly. To put it mildly, she was taken aback. She was unable to comprehend my refusal to pay. For me, however, it was straightforward. Why should I pay for a home that I don't occupy? Since I had practically been kicked out of my own house, why should I pay my bills? She wasn't happy when I told her this. She accused me of being petty, ungrateful, and self-centered. She stated I should be more understanding because Jake and his kids were going through a tough time. But since she didn't understand me, how could I be understanding? I refused to back down. I promised her that I wouldn't pay a dime until Jake and his children left and I could go back home. I didn't care that she didn't like it. This time, I had to establish limits. I have to put myself first. I'm now staying with my friend while I try to decide what to do next. I feel horrible about leaving, but I also feel like I had no other option. My mother's willingness to ignore my feelings for someone else was demonstrated to me in this circumstance. I'm not sure how long Jake and his children want to stay, but I'm not going to return until things change. After I first refused to pay the bills, a couple more days went by. I began adjusting to living at my friend's house during the time. In all honesty, I felt more at ease in her tiny apartment than I had in my own home in weeks since she had been so patient about the whole thing. For folks I hardly knew, I wasn't being made to give up my comfort or my personal space. I was beginning to feel normal again, and it felt like a secure haven. My mother then texted me once more. It was time for me to pay my share, she said, bringing up the bills again. My stomach fell when I received her message. Even though I knew this was coming, I was still quite frustrated. She had made me feel like a stranger in the house, so how could she really expect me to pay for it when I wasn't living there? In an attempt to remain composed, I inhaled deeply before responding and informing her that I would not be making the payment. I reiterated to her that I no longer resided there. I told her that she had made the independent decision to put Jake and his children before me and that she had invited them into our house without my permission. I promised not to return as long as they were residing in the house. Sincerely, I was sick of saying the same thing over and over again, so I was strong this time. She couldn't ask me to pay for a living arrangement that excluded me, even if she wanted to live with them. I also suggested that since Jake and his children were taking up all the resources I was paying for, he might be able to help if she needed it with the bills. What did she say? He can't. It seems that Jake's apartment still needed to be fixed following the flood, and she claims that he was unable to assist with our household expenses while simultaneously covering the cost of the repairs. She also mentioned that Jake and his children would probably be remaining for a few more weeks, which completely shocked me. Weeks. Weeks of strangers occupying what used to feel like my haven, weeks of them taking over my room, and weeks of me sleeping on a couch if I ever returned made my heart sink. What I was reading was unbelievable. In addition to allowing Jake and his children to stay for a short time, my mother had totally changed the dynamics of our home to accommodate them. She was now telling me that I had to keep making payments for a house that I didn't even feel comfortable in. I was enraged. As quietly as possible, I informed her that I would not be contributing to the costs if such were the case. Rather, I would be giving money to my friend, the one who had truly provided me with a warm and secure home. Since I was now more of a visitor in my friend's house than a resident of mine, I informed her that I would be helping to pay her bills. My mother lost it at that point. She bombarded me with texts accusing me of being ungrateful and self-centered. She said that I was punishing her for attempting to assist a friend in need, that I was wrecking her life, and that I didn't want her to be happy. She kept talking about how difficult Jake's circumstances were, how he had nowhere else to go, and how I had to be more sympathetic. All I could think about, though, was how she hadn't showed me the same level of comprehension. She hadn't informed me that Jake's children would be arriving. She hadn't inquired about my consent to them occupying my room. She made her choice without even thinking about how it would impact me. Was she now accusing me of being self-centered? She seemed to have entirely ignored anything I had been attempting to communicate. It couldn't be further from the truth to say that I wasn't unhappy because I didn't want her to be happy. I wished for her to have friends, be happy, and advance in life. But her enjoyment wasn't the point of this. She didn't seem to understand how much it stung that she had put someone else's comfort, her own child's comfort, above mine. Naturally, I felt bad. I adore her, and she is my mother. However, her remarks resonated. She gave the impression that I was a terrible, cold-hearted person who didn't give a damn about her welfare. How could I not feel deceived, though? It was about the idea behind it, not only Jake and his children. She didn't even consider asking me how I felt about it. She is now upset with me for establishing limits and advocating for myself. I decided to put myself first and wasn't going to back down the more I understood that I couldn't allow her to make me pay for anything that didn't benefit me. My mom was free to decide whether or not to assist Jake, but she had to deal with the fallout, including the financial strain. Given that I had effectively been kicked out of my house, it wasn't my responsibility to support their living arrangements. I'm staying at a friend's house for the time being and concentrating on the things I can manage. I've been assisting her with household duties and expenses, and it feels good to be a part of a family that genuinely values me. Throughout all of this, my friend has been invaluable, and I'm not sure what I would have done without her. I'm still upset and hurt over my mom, but I'm attempting to give myself some space to think things through. I have stated that I would not return until Jake and his children have left, but I am unsure of how long they will be staying. It's a difficult position, and I feel conflicted about taking care of myself against wanting to help my mom. However, I have to prioritize my health in the end. I don't care if that makes me selfish. Right now, I'm not sure if our relationship will ever be the same, so I just hope my mom understands how her actions have affected me before it's too late. It has been a couple more days since I last spoke to my mother. I continued to remain at my friend's house in an effort to concentrate on my work and adjust to the fact that I would no longer be living at home. To be honest, it was an odd sensation. I felt more at ease and liberated than I had in weeks, on the one hand. However, there was resentment lurking in the back of my mind. Knowing that you have unresolved stress looming over you makes it difficult to completely unwind. I was still very wounded by the way things had turned out, even though I didn't want to acknowledge it. My mother had chosen someone else over me, and I had been expelled from my own house. There was no way I could simply let it go. My mother then texted me once more one day. Her tone was quite different this time. Unlike before, she wasn't demanding or irate, rather, she expressed regret. She said that she was sorry for the way things had gone and that she was unaware of how deeply her choices had wounded me. She said that things would be different if I came home. She even promised to make an effort to get me a room of my own so I wouldn't have to sleep on the couch any longer. It was unbelievable to me. Did she actually make this choice now? And why couldn't this be done earlier? It was like being slapped in the face once more. She was offering me an arrangement that was equally as humiliating as the last time, in addition to asking me to return to a setting where I was obviously not a priority. How was I expected to feel better after that? How could I think anything had changed at all? When she revealed that she was struggling to pay the bills without my help, things became worse. I was truly pushed over the edge by this part. Was I meant to feel sorry now? I'm the bad guy now that everything has happened because I didn't pay for a house that I didn't even reside in? I didn't abandon her without warning. I repeatedly assured her that while Jake and his children were there, I would not be helping with household expenses. However, she attempted to use guilt to get me to return rather than dealing with the underlying issue. Her apology didn't appear sincere. It was about money, not about repairing things or repairing our relationship. And to tell the truth, that only made me more irate. I could feel my irritation boiling over as I read her message again. She obviously still didn't get why I had gone in the first place. She did express regret for the incident, but she refused to accept accountability for the choices that led to it. She refused to admit how much her behavior had wounded me. She only appeared interested in getting me back so I could resume paying the rent. I declined. While Jake and his children were still there, I informed her that I would not be returning. Furthermore, even after they went, I wasn't sure if I wanted to return. There was a breach of trust. I no longer felt the same sense of security and acceptance in that place. As I gave it more thinking, I came to the conclusion that perhaps it was time for me to move on. At that point, the thought of renting my own house started to cross my thoughts. Even though I wasn't rich, I had a reliable job and, with careful budgeting, I could afford a modest one-bedroom apartment. It would be mine, even though it would be tight. My own place, where I wouldn't feel out of place or have to answer to anyone. It was both thrilling and terrible to consider. Since I had never lived entirely alone before, the thought of making such a drastic change felt intimidating. However, it appeared to be the only practical remedy at the moment. I was unable to constantly switch between my mom's and my friend's homes. My friend was really supportive when I shared this concept with her. I could stay with her as long as I needed to, she said, and I should take my time. I felt like I was holding her back, even though her kindness meant the world to me. Although she would never admit it, I didn't want to cause her any trouble. I couldn't constantly invade her personal space because she had a life of her own. I therefore began searching for apartments. Finding something that appeared like a good fit didn't take long. It was a modest one-room apartment close to where I worked. Although it wasn't very noteworthy, It was tidy, reasonably priced, and most importantly, mine. I went to see it for myself, and I knew right away that this was the place I wanted to be. The thought of having a place of my own, a place where I might at last feel at home again, was liberating. A few days later, I signed the lease and began gradually relocating my belongings. I am incredibly grateful to my friend for all of her assistance during this process. She has always been my pillar of support, and I will always remember how she came through for me in my hour of need. In the meantime, I received a text from my mother requesting that I return. Her messages were a mix of desperation, anger, and apology. She continuously talked about how difficult life was without me, how much she missed me, and how she wished to put things right. However, the night Jake and his children arrived was the only thing on my mind whenever I received her texts. She invited them to sleep in my room without even asking. I reflected on how she had disregarded my feelings when I expressed my discomfort to her. I recalled how, when I made the decision to go, she accused me of being self-centered. I choose to ignore her. I might as well disregard her now since she disregarded me when I most needed her. I did it to protect myself, not out of resentment. I couldn't return to a place where other people's wants and feelings would constantly take precedence over mine. I had to make a decision. As I write this, I'm sitting in my new apartment, trying to take it all in. Anger, grief, and relief have all been mixed together, but mostly I just feel liberated. I feel like I have control over my life for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure how my connection with my mother will develop in the future, but for now, I need time to recover and consider my options. Am I being self-centered by not going back to put myself first? Although I doubt it, some individuals might answer yes. Setting limits and being selfish, in my opinion, are two different things. In light of everything that transpired, I am not sorry for my decision. My wife's gym addiction is ruining our marriage. She's having an affair with a gym friend, leaving me with our unborn child. OP's wife, 30F, has always been fit but has been increasingly passionate about working out over the last 1.5 years, returning to a gym she had previously left due to her busy schedule. The gym slowly started taking over her schedule, both weekend days, and every weekday pre- and post-work. Going to the gym becomes the solution for any stress, fights, crisis. Everything is gym to the point where if the wife misses a session, it affects her mood negatively, as OP says, like a junkie not getting her fix. As wife is now 4mo pregnant, OP expresses concern over the intensity of her workouts and also that he simply misses her, given all her time is now taken up by gym. They can't work out together, because gym is her time. She won't work out at his gym either. Gym becomes a form of escapism from real life, a compulsion, essentially, and no problems wife is running away from ever really get solved because gym is simply not the solution wife seems to think it is. Gym has become so prevalent that family members, friends start making comments on how much time wife and gym spend together. Update 1, OP shares that he had originally laughed over comments on his post that speculated about infidelity, but quickly came to discover they were correct. Wife has been sleeping with guy from gym, who she had mentioned to OP countless times as a gym friend. There is confrontation. OP breaks wife's phone, wife hits OP. OP leaves for a short period of time and returns to wife, who, though remorseful, will not admit to exactly what infidelities she's committed. Update 1 ends with OP feeling guilt for his rage, left with zero answers as to exactly what's going on with wife. Update 2, my wife admitted to an affair February 12, 2024. Wife admits to an affair. She felt bad about it, but not bad enough to not sleep with guy from gym pretty quickly. She might even be in love with him, she doesn't know, or won't say. And oh, there's a chance the child she's currently pregnant with might not be OP's. She'll get a paternity test though. Stellar work wife. My wife is moving in with her AP, they're in love February 22, 2024, guy from gym and wife, who will still be referred to as wife. For now. Are moving in together. She's not getting the paternity test. OP expresses sadness for her, that she just can't be alone, or seem to work through her mess on her own. Wife had been with OP since she was 20, and OP theorizes she is codependent. Guy from gym allegedly doesn't care if the baby isn't his, he's happy to play house with OP's wife. My wife has agreed to a paternity test February 29, 2024. Shocker, guy from gym wants a paternity test, so a paternity test they will get. In follow-up comments, OP reveals the results say he is in fact the father. An update on my wife's affair and pregnancy March 15, 2024. OP is now conflicted. He has gone from excited to be a father, to not being sure he's going to be a father at all, to now knowing he will be the father of a child born into the disaster that wife has created. There is a small but non-physical confrontation between OP and Guy from gym when wife brings him to OP's house to gather things she needs, and OP tells Guy from gym to leave or he's gonna punch him. OP and wife have private words upstairs. Wife is just so in love with Guy from gym, she can't help it. Predictably, confrontation becomes physical when OP returns to his living room to see Guy from gym still standing there despite the warning, and so OP follows through and coldly clocks him. Update 5 closes with OP and wife still legally married, but wife dedicated to living with and loving Guy from gym. Another installment of the implosion, which is my marriage, April 10, 2024. OP's wife is still purganante, 26 weeks. OP and wife have agreed that he will be the one in the delivery room when the baby is born. And Guy from gym will not be present. Guy from gym has a big problem with this, of course, because having an affair with and housing another man's pregnant wife simply would not be enough. OP prepares to sell the marital house and split the profit. He gets to keep their dog, thank God. Wife's sister shares with OP that wife is already complaining about Guy from gym, that he's selfish, hangs out away from home too much, etc. Birds of a feather and whatnot. OP ends the update, expressing that he is at least happy his soon-to-be ex-wife is miserable. I'm still alive, May 19, 2024. I'm still alive. I'm mainly posting here because several people have reached out to me and were concerned that I'd taken my own life. No, I'm not on the brink of ending my life. I think I'm doing better than I have since all of this started. Around the time of my last post, my story blew up and I was getting messages from people who saw it on TikTok and YouTube. I had to take a step back because it was a little overwhelming. I have over 100 unread messages here. I appreciate it, but it was a little uncomfortable at the time, and I got to the point where I didn't really want to talk about the situation with my wife and her AP anymore. So as of today, our baby is due in less than 10 weeks. We're in the home stretch now. I don't feel prepared at all. All of this other stuff has just been so distracting. I started working in a nursery. It's not done yet, but I have the floor finished and the walls painted. My ex-wife was impressed with the color scheme and furniture I chose. She's not legally my ex-wife yet, but I've started calling her that. It sort of makes it easier. I also packed up a bunch of her stuff. Originally I refused to spend my time packing up her things, but eventually just said screw it and started packing it. I'm at the point where it'll just be easier to not see all of her stuff around here. Why did I leave it for so long? She came over to get some of the boxes I packed up. She came alone. Things were fine between us. I loaded the stuff into her car. We didn't argue. At one point she started to tear up and said she fucked up. I said yeah she did, but there's no point talking about it now. She shit all over our marriage. She has her muscle-bound asshole to go home to now anyway, so who cares? She said I know, but it's not the same. I told her nothing has been the same since she decided to fuck him the first time. Supposedly he's going to let me be in the delivery room when my baby is born. I didn't even argue it when she said it like that, but inside I was boiling at the idea of him letting me be there for the birth of my child. She says she talked to him and he agreed it wouldn't really be right to not allow me to be there. I'm going to take what I can get if it means being there for the birth of my child. I'm going to try to just ignore him for the time being. She was acting all sweet and laying on all of the I really want you there, I really need you there stuff, and I know mentally I'm not in a place to be that cold to her when she starts acting that way. I'm trying to be indifferent more than anything else, but it's so hard when she's actually around and starts looking at me a certain way and making me feel bad. She invited me over to see the nursery they have set up at his house. I'm not sure I can bring myself to go into another man's house and look at the nursery set up for my kid. I did ask her if she was truly safe there though. I don't know why, it's just been bothering me. As pissed as I still am, I don't want to find out he's mistreating her, and I definitely don't want my kid to be going into an unsafe household. I haven't told her about anything her sister has told me. They probably won't last, but as of right now there's a very good chance my newborn baby will be going home to his house. It kills me to think about. It's almost soul-destroying to think about if I dwell on it too long. She says she's fine. He genuinely loves her. He's great with kids. He accepts that she's having a baby and that this is part of the package. She insists it's not weird because she wasn't pregnant when anything started between them. I asked her why she did it. Why did she ever let anything start between them in the first place? She said I don't know. Then went into I don't want to talk about this mode and left pretty soon after. Typical behavior from her. Just run away. Overall I'm doing okay. I'm not sitting here depressed and drinking a bottle of scotch every night anymore. I mean on occasion, but for the most part no. I feel more used to my new normal now, and that'll all change yet again pretty soon. Additional info: there's a draft of a custody plan now, But the court won't approve anything until after the baby is born. Right now she's in agreement, but there's plenty of time for her to change her mind, or for him to convince her to change her mind. She plans to breastfeed, but with agreement that she'll pump and the baby can drink from a bottle when not with mom. Everything I've read says a baby ideally needs to spend time with each parent frequently, without gaps that are too long in between, and it's best if each parent is feeding, changing, bathing, etc., during their time. At this time she's in agreement with all of this. I can say that she's not said or done anything to indicate she wants to restrict my time with the baby, other than the whole delivery room thing. She seems to want me to be involved in that respect. I hope she sticks to her word. If not, I will be fighting it through legal means. I'm a dad. July 2nd, 2024. I have a baby. A little girl. I'm a dad. She was born yesterday at 11:57 p.m., 2 weeks early. As he's done before, she was having some pains off and on and he left for work yesterday morning. She works from home on Mondays. She told me around 8:30 a.m. she was having contractions 17 minutes apart. The same thing happened not long ago, but then by evening all the pains stopped. I was at work, so I told her to keep me posted. A little later she said they were 15 minutes apart and she had some other signs it might be actual labor starting. I asked her if she needed somebody there with her. She said wanted me to come be with her. I didn't even mean to volunteer myself. She was scared. I didn't even ask why she didn't call him. I left work and went over to his house. Uncomfortable doesn't begin to describe it, but there were obviously more important things going on. He wasn't there. She didn't even contact him. She said she just wanted it to be me and her there. In her words, he hadn't seen her pee or shit herself yet, but I've witnessed all of that stuff already, so she was more comfortable with me there. I really tried to be as nice and supportive as possible. Set the whole thing about her affair, our marriage, everything to the side for a brief time. I don't really know what my purpose was being there, but I think she just needed somebody there so she didn't feel alone. She spent most of the time stretching and doing some sort of yoga labor routine and bouncing on this huge exercise ball. I twiddled my thumbs for the most part and looked through a bunch of his belongings. I was timing the contractions and they were consistent and slowly did get closer together, so I thought it was probably actually going to happen. It wasn't nearly far enough along to go to the hospital yet, and it was getting close to when he'd get home. I was planning how I'd handle that when she called me into the bathroom to ask her if I thought her water broke. It wasn't like in the movies with this huge gush of water. So he got home and I was there. He came into the house and the first thing he asked is, "What are you doing here?" I think he thought something else was going on. "No, you just left and went to work and left her alone when she was scared." He said he was home and he'd be with her until it was time to go to the hospital. He put his hand on my shoulder and said something like, "Thanks, bud. I got it from here and we'll call you when we're on the way to the hospital." He called me bud. I told him I wasn't his fucking buddy and to fuck off. I could tell she wanted me to leave. I'm not sure she really wanted me to leave so much as she was in labor and the tension between the two of us wasn't what she needed, and I knew that. It was his house, so what was I supposed to do? I left and prayed they'd actually call me instead of letting me know the next day that my kid had been born. She texted me a few hours later to say the doctor told her to go to the hospital. At that point I still didn't know if I was going to be waiting outside or what he'd decide was best for his apparent wife and child. I was allowed to be in the room. I didn't force my way in there. She said she wanted me to be there. He was there too. By far the single most awkward experience of my life, and the only reason I was able to excuse it was because she told me she wanted me there and I didn't want to miss the chance to be there when my kid was born and to hold my kid before he did. I can't imagine what the doctors and nurses were thinking. Fucking humiliating. Then the guy tried to police what I could see. I put the baby in there. He's fucking watching and it's like this is still my wife and that's my baby. I chose to stay dignified and I ignored him the entire time. I was there to do whatever she told me to do and my focus wasn't on him, but in any other setting I don't think I would have been able to hold back. The baby came flying out. I mean, as far as labor goes. These are the nurses' words and I trust labor and delivery nurses to know what they're talking about. She tore very bad because the baby came out so fast. The baby is so tiny, barely 6 pounds and only 18 inches, but perfectly healthy. I went home for a short rest, although I really couldn't rest at all. I went back today and of course he was there. Surprisingly, he said he was going to give us some time alone with the baby. Not sure if she had previously asked him to do that when I showed up or not, didn't ask. He even brought us all food back when he returned a few hours later. I wondered if mine might be poisoned, but I tried to be nice. He's still not gone, so I'm wondering how long he'll be around. I just can't let myself do anything that will make her try to keep me away from my daughter now. I don't want them making it difficult for me. I'd prefer not to share her name publicly, but I can confirm it's the name we chose for a daughter years ago. He had no say and he hasn't said anything about the name at all. It kills me to see him holding her though. I eventually left because it was just too much sitting there pretending to be like some bizarre company. I'll know I will get my time with her when he's not around. He's already posting them on his social media. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to figure it out. I just have to find a way to be the bigger person because I won't let him or their relationship discourage me from being my daughter's dad. I totally get doing anything for your kids now, and if it means having to pretend to get along with him, I will. Additional comments from OOP. It's not about picking me. I just have a hard time not caring about her anymore. The fact that she was carrying my child made it a lot more difficult. Otherwise, I could have and would have cut all ties with her. I don't know, I still feel the need to protect her or help her. Hopefully it'll get easier now that she and the baby are two separate people. Honestly, I'm considering doing something pretty stupid. She's getting discharged from the hospital early tomorrow morning. I don't want them to go home with him, so I'm thinking about asking her to come home to our house instead. It's ridiculous and sets us up for disaster. It wouldn't be to be with her. I don't want my newborn baby going home to another man's house. I don't think it's for the baby's sake that I want to stop it. It's for my sake. But it's not like we'd be divorced and living together forever. So we'd live together for some period of time, but eventually we'd go our separate ways, date other people and so on. I can't trust her again. That would probably be worse for our kid in the long run. At least by being in two separate homes in the first place, this will just be the norm for her and she won't have to go through that heartache of being one family splitting into two. I just don't know how I'm going to be able to handle seeing my child going home from the hospital to his house. I'm honestly scared to be present when they're discharged because I'm not sure I can control myself. I caved and I asked her to come home with me when they was discharged from the hospital. I framed it more like, if you don't want to go home with him, you don't have to. I let her know she could come home to our house if she wanted to. She said she can't. Why? Because he's done so much for her. He moved her into his house. They have a whole nursery set up. He loves her. I don't love her anymore after what she did, her words, but he loves her and accepts her even with the baby. She thinks she'll never find anyone who will love her and love our baby too, so she can't risk losing him. I tried to tell her she doesn't owe him anything. Just because he let her move in and there's a nursery there doesn't mean she's indebted to him, especially not when it comes to something this big. She said, I want to, but I just can't. I'm sorry. I left. I told her I couldn't sit there and watch the get into his car and go to his house. As a consolation I got a, you can come over and see her tomorrow. Great. I know she did this. This is all her doing. But why am I the one feeling like I failed? This wouldn't have happened if I hadn't immediately shut her out. I basically just pushed her to him. OOP on the AP posting pictures of the baby online. Today I told him he can't post pictures of her online. He said he was just posting a few pictures to say how proud and happy he was of my wife. It wasn't weird. I said he can post her all he wants, but he can't post the baby. He didn't seem to be taking it seriously, so I told him I know he wishes he'd won this one, but he didn't. She's my kid, not his. If he's genuine about being all buddy-buddy and respecting me as the actual father, he'll respect my request. He said okay, he understood. We'll see. New updates. Life update July 24th, 2024. Many people have asked for an update on my situation, but I've been pretty busy. There's the baby, plus a week of completely unrelated but never-ending annoying problems. Remember that book Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day? That's the week I've been having, but I'm not even going to get into it beyond saying I can't even stay at my own house right now due to a giant hole in the wall. I've been dealing with insurance and contractors all day, and they hit a water pipe. I'm still on paternity leave and continue to regularly spend time with my daughter. We have a set schedule for when my daughter comes to stay with me, so I've been spending less time over at his house. Sometimes my wife needs help during the day though, or just to be able to take a shower or a nap, so I will stop over to help her. Really, I just want to take advantage of any opportunity I can to spend time with her and bond with her. Plus, breastfeeding isn't working out very well. She's still not producing enough milk and I know she's upset about it, but it sort of makes things easier for me. At least she has help when the baby is with her, supposedly he helps, gets up at night, etc. I'm on my own, and I won't lie and say it's a walk in the park, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. The other day she called me and asked me to come over. She said she was on the verge of a mental breakdown. I've heard that line from her many times, when she cheated on me without my knowledge, and it was usually mostly related to her job. I got over there and she was saying she can't handle being a mom, she can't handle life, she can't function. She was crying. This time she couldn't run off the gym. She would if she could, but she's not really allowed to exercise yet. She won't talk to anyone, won't seek professional help. Some days she seems much better than others. She's just an easily overwhelmed person. Everything overwhelms her. Sometimes we have, dare I say, a good time together. The most she can really go as far as physical activity right now is walk. We took the baby in her longest walk yet and walked from his house to my house. Everything was fine in the walk. She was in a good mood. We were joking around. Then she turned really sad after being at my house, our former shared house, after a little while. She finally admitted that this isn't how it's supposed to be, raising our daughter between two homes. She said my home is our daughter's real home and she's only supposed to have one home. Then she started sobbing about not having a home anymore. My house isn't her home and her boyfriend Gumbura's house isn't her home and she's essentially homeless and doesn't belong anywhere. She admitted she fucked up really badly and she doesn't want to share custody or to only see her daughter half the time. She just wants to come home. But she loves him and she thinks he loves her and our daughter and she doesn't want to hurt him after he's done all this for her. I said, so what? What she wants for her kid should be more important than his feelings. If he can't get over the fact that the married, pregnant woman who he was sleeping with wants her kid to grow up in a single home with her actual father, he can fuck off. He can fuck off anyway. If she can't tell him and wants me to tell him, I will. She doesn't think she can tell him. I told her this is her biggest issue, communication and honesty. Just tell people the truth and stop being a pussy about ever telling anyone the truth about how you really feel. Thing is, I've been tolerating him lately. Don't like him, but tolerate him. I'm not hanging out with him. Ever. I know it sounds crazy coming from me, but I think he's genuinely in this. Still shouldn't have been fucking my wife. Doesn't absolve him of any of his involvement. He's back to being cloying nice to me. Suggesting we hang out, try to be friends. He's so fucking happy all the time. It's a little unsettling, but I think he's just one of those people and maybe that's what she likes about him. I'm not one of those people, never will be. So anyway, she and I sort of got into an argument. Started as a discussion, turned into an argument, then morphed back to a discussion, all about everything we don't like about each other in our relationship. In the end, we were both able to say what we need from the other person. She's just too overwhelmed right now and can't make any changes. She can't handle trying to change right now. It gives her too much anxiety. So I don't know, we're sort of at an impasse right now. Then this stuff with the house, I've just been extra stressed and not really all that pleasant to deal with. My wife has moved home, for now July 28, 2024. This month continues to be the strangest I've ever experienced. The repairs to my house were made and I'm back home thankfully. I can only take a few nights under my parents' roof. I slept with somebody else. We went out on a date. I think we both just wanted to have sex to say we'd finally gotten over our former spouses. She's the ex-wife of a friend of mine. She and I are actually closer/better friends now than her ex-husband and I. Several people have suggested that we start dating each other. We get along great and we are on the surface a really good match, but it was too fucking weird for both of us. She's very attractive, very social and fun to be around, and has been incredibly kind to me during this whole ordeal, but I can't see her as more than a friend. I had been intentionally avoiding sleeping with anyone else. I hadn't been with anyone since the last time I slept with my wife. That feels like an eternity ago. For the longest time I wasn't interested in being with other women. Then it sort of morphed into my way of feeling morally superior to her. I was going to hold out and not pursue anything until after we were divorced. It's pretty pointless and childish. Just a dumb way to make myself feel better and to be able to say I never cheated. I still don't feel like I cheated. There is no marriage anymore. Within hours of this happening, I started getting texts from my wife saying she decided she wants to come home. It's like she had some sort of sense. She was saying she was ready. Would I come help her? I called her and told her I don't want her to come home and to be in a relationship again. She doesn't get to just decide that's what's going to happen. She then started to say, "Oh, I know, I just meant move back in." I told her I didn't really believe her and felt like she was just jerking me around again. She said she thought our conversation the other day had gone so well and that she thought we seemed to be at a place where we could really work on fixing everything, but until then she could live in another room. She said she was completely serious about it and she wants our daughter to be in one home. I feel so mixed about everything, but ultimately I want my daughter living in my house 24/7 and I don't want another man helping to raise her, so I took the bait. Today I showed up at his house to help her move some things, but I anticipated I'd get there and she'd either have changed her mind or she wouldn't have been planning to leave at all and was only waiting to see me do some more tricks for her. They were arguing when I got there. The baby was crying. She was crying and running around packing things in bags, and he was following behind her begging her to stay, offering to do anything to make her stay. He accused me of this being my idea. Maybe it was, IDK. I don't really care what he thinks. It was obvious she had just sprung this news on him shortly before I got there. She was telling her over and over that she just wants her child raised in one home and that his home wasn't really their home, and she was sorry she was doing this to him after everything he'd done, but she just has to give our daughter one home with her real father. We got back over to my house and she's obviously an emotional mess. I have no room prepared for her. Not 15 minutes later he shows up at the front door. She didn't want to talk to him. He wouldn't give up, and eventually he was there on the front porch loudly saying things like, "That's not what you were saying when you were blowing me last night." So at that point, after I'm sure our neighbors had been enjoying this embarrassing scene long enough, I told him if he didn't leave I'd call the cops. I went out there and tried to calm him down. I had to sympathize with him. She runs away, that's what she does. I may have said a few other things in my own favor and to make him realize he doesn't want to be involved in this mess that is my wife. I don't think he'll give up so easily. It sounds terrible, but once she was at my house I sort of found myself wishing she'd leave with him. I know I'd wanted her to come home, and I tell myself it was mostly due to the baby, but now I'm wondering what the hell I've gotten myself into. She said, "I didn't really blow him last night. I haven't done anything with him since she was born. I've only been thinking about you." I told her, "Yeah, right. You expect me to believe it? Even if it's true, what on earth makes you think I'd ever believe anything that you say?" Then out of spite I told her I slept with somebody else. I know I only told her to hurt her, and I feel bad about it now. She immediately demanded to know who. I told her it wasn't her business. She claims it is her business because we're still married. Nope, I'm not sharing. So, now we're awkwardly existing. I don't have much faith that she's going to stay here. I think she'll be back at his place within the week. I've told her that he's not allowed over here. He has no business being here. And if we're raising our daughter in the same house, together, then she can't just run off to his house to be with him whenever she feels like it. It won't work that way. She says she knows, and she wants me to want to be with her again, and she'll prove to me she can be a good partner. She tried to kiss me and I rejected her. She's upset. She's taking a nap now. I feel like I've dug myself into a very deep hole now. Relevant comments. Smoke Thin Mints. Brother, you better get her out of that house and fast, Omeloop. I was really doing a good job of tolerating the guy since they came home from the hospital. I don't like him and never will like him, but I don't believe he had any nefarious intentions with my daughter. However, my heart broke every time I had to leave my little girl over there at another man's house. Or when I'd go over there to pick her up and he would greet me at the door holding my baby, talking to her like he was her dad. No, that's one of the lowest feelings in the world. So for these reasons I'm happy to have them here. I just don't know how this can or will work with her mother living here. DC Photo 78, is this really the environment you want your child to grow up in? OOP, no, not at all. But I also don't want her growing up in another man's home. What I'm worried about is my wife dragging her back and forth. I've told her she can't do that. It's not fair to me or our child. Purple_Bishop 2, if you really don't want your daughter being raised half-time by AP, your only real option is to truly attempt to reconcile, but it's pretty clear neither of you really want to reconcile with each other. It's just that neither of you want to be apart from your daughter. If she is going to live with you for even a couple of days, you need to have some tenderness in your heart for her and be willing to lovingly interact with her and your daughter. Your WW is postpartum and an emotional wreck, so if you gray rock or get angry, shit will go south fast in a way that won't be good for your daughter. All other paths lead to 50-50 its custody and acceptance of AP having a role in your daughter's life. Be civil, not friendly, civil, to AP as you say your W loves him and will likely go back to him soon. If you and AP are at war, it will be terrible for your daughter. OOP, I'm going to be nice. We sat on the porch while it was storming outside tonight and she was talking to the baby and said, "This is how it should be. Daughter's name, Mommy and Daddy." Several rude comments immediately popped into my brain, but I kept them to myself. I figure I might as well enjoy it while I can. Well, enjoy having my daughter here and maybe pretending we're a normal family for an hour. I'm not actually enjoying having my wife here right now. It's not making me feel good. I didn't mind when she was here the other day when we took a walk and came over here, but today I'm really not enjoying her being here. I'm going to keep that to myself. My best friend claims I owe her everything I have, including my boyfriend. She thinks I wouldn't be successful without her. Is she right? I know I should be careful calling someone best friend in a post like this, but I don't know how else to call Jessie. Our parents are great friends, so we grew up together and she kind of had my back in high school. Long story short, on the teenager food chain, she was on top and I should be on the bottom. But nobody messed with me cause I was Jessie's friend. Jessie is one of those people who require attention. I never minded though, nobody is perfect, right? But now that I have my first real boyfriend, she doesn't know how to behave. Every time we are together she is really handsy. Always touching his arms, running fingers through his hair, complimenting him. And now she even started with the prank spankings on the butt, you know? I just feel really uncomfortable with it. Maybe it's normal. I mean, Jessie has a lot of guys friends, so maybe this is okay. My best friend never thought much of it either. Am I just overreacting? She is super pretty, so maybe I'm just jealous. Anyway, yesterday something really threw me off. Best friend had to do some work and I had a book thing, hobby. So we decided to meet later at a friend's house. They were getting together to drink and so on. Best friend finishes work early and calls me, but I don't really need him to come over to the book thing. I know he doesn't like it, so I just tell him to go to friend's house. Then I start getting texts from Jessie all like, "Girl, you gotta come to this party now. Your best friend is wasted. LOL. LOL. We so drunk you need to come and stop us. I can't behave myself if you don't get here soon." And so on. The book thing took longer than I thought and I was just getting mad and madder, but I am a very non-confrontational person, so I deal with it. I call best friend when it's over, cause I don't feel like going to this party anymore, but I was his ride, so I ask him if needs me to come pick him up. He says, sure. I get there and don't even go inside. I am ready to release the hounds of hell on him. But he gets in my car and he is stone cold sober. I ask him if he was drinking and then show him Jessie's texts. He gets super upset and says she was lying. He wasn't even hanging directly with her, but catching up with a friend who just came back to town. He says I should have texted him letting him know what she was saying so he could confront her about it, since you don't ever seem to be able to give that girl some boundaries, his words. Now I am thinking maybe I should talk to Jessie. But maybe she was just drunk and annoying me cause she wanted me there. I don't know. I mean, this girl was really nice to me growing up when she could have been a bitch. I don't like how she behaves around him, but at the same time I don't want it to look like I don't trust her. Is there a polite way of going about it? Or I should maybe wait and see if this happens again? Am I overreacting? Too long. Didn't read old friends are handsy with my boyfriend, and it upsets me, but I don't know if I should tell her or how. Update. Thanks to everyone for your comments and help. I decided to talk to Jessie and posted a development to the story update 1 yesterday. I posted here about how my best friend Jessie is a bit handsy with my boyfriend and it makes me feel uncomfortable. Too long. Didn't read as she touches him a lot and sent me inappropriate messages when she was at a party with him. I am very thankful to all those who commented, especially the ones who encouraged me to say something and what. I don't like arguments, so those were very important to me. Thank you. Last night we were alone because she wanted me to help her choose clothes for an event. I was at her place, so I thought I should say something. I wanted to say something. I was very polite and just said that I knew she meant no harm, but I didn't feel good about it. So I asked her if she could tone it down. I should have said stop, but I guess I'm weak. She didn't really say anything mean, but her attitude was a bit off, I think. She was looking at me in a scornful kind of way, and the way she smiled once I was done talking. It just felt weird. She didn't say anything else but, okay, and we just moved on to choosing her clothes and I left after. We were supposed to go get something to eat, but she said she was tired. I am not dumb, she was hurt. So I texted a common friend, more her friend than mine, and without getting into details, I just told him that I talked to Jess about something that was important to me but that I was afraid she may have gotten the wrong idea from it. The common friend said, look, I don't want to get involved, but you should watch it. I asked what he meant, he said nothing, just watch it. A little while after that he texts me back and says changed my mind, I do want to get involved. And sends me a bunch of prints of texts going back and forth between him and Jessie. It basically starts with him asking her if the two of us had a fight, cause I was worried. He was kind with his words, I don't mind him stepping in. And then just a non-stop stream of her being horrible. She says I had a big mouth and was judging her behavior cause I'm a prude who doesn't know how to be around guys. How she taught me everything I know about having a life and how dare I tell her what she can or cannot do, or how I should thank her for even having a boyfriend at all. Common friend actually called her out for being rude and no friend of mine. After the prints he told me I'm done with her, I give up and you should watch it. He also said it was okay if I told her I had the prints. I didn't though, didn't know what to say. I mean she is not 100% wrong, but even though I know that, it really hurts to read those. This morning I woke up and saw she texted me late at night. She says she knows Pete sent me the prints and she didn't mean to be rude, but it's ridiculous that I'm jealous of her because if she wanted my best friend she could just have him. You want me to prove it? So I'm being silly and should drop it, is what she meant. She ends it with kisses and a joke. So I don't know if she was being playful, apologizing, threatening or being pragmatic. I didn't answer her yet. I don't know what to say. Should I even say something? Or should I just let it go? I wish I could talk to someone about this, but I am very private. I usually go to Jessie with these things. Help, too long. Didn't read asked an old friend to stop being so handsy with my boyfriend. She took it the wrong way and told a common friend I got no business telling her what to do since I owe her so much notable comments. Commenter. Sounds like this person is completely wrapped up in their own head and has a serious case of overthinking their importance in life, especially other people's lives. Obviously we're all going to tell you to drop her because she's not a desirable person to be around if that's how she acts/talks to you in person and behind your back. This person thinks they own you enough so that they're decided to let you have your best friend. Fuck that shit. Also show your guy everything that's happened cause guaranteed she's going to go after him. OP, I suppose you're all right. It just gets me, you know? It's a 20-year-long friendship. I keep thinking maybe this is a misunderstanding. She didn't mean it or she is going through a hard time and doesn't know how to deal with it. I am just trying to make sure I am not overreacting, so I needed some outside perspective. As for my best friend, I think he would turn her down quite fast. He doesn't really like her. He just hangs with her because of me. He's always saying that he'd rather not and all. So it's unlikely that they'd be alone together. But I will talk to him. Thank you for the heads up. Turns out she already went after him. I was stupid. Update 2, my boyfriend is having sex with her. A friend convinced some other friends to send me prints of text between themselves and either my best friend or best friend. They're pretty clear. I confronted my best friend, he looked lost, said he loves me and it was just sex. He says Jessie kept throwing herself at him, teasing him, and he said he didn't like her but I still wanted to hang out. He said he just had sex with her to see if she would move on and leave him alone, and that it only happened a couple of times. Says he won't do it anymore. He doesn't even like her. He loves me, asking me to please forgive him. From the texts, once I finally made it through them all, I think that Jessie went to the party, where me and my best friend met, because she wanted to hook up with him. She had it bad for him, but he didn't feel the same way. She was trying to get him to break up with me and then to get me to break up with him. It worked. As of yesterday he is a single man. In some of those texts they are talking about some of the hookups. I feel like throwing up. I blocked him, cause he was still trying to get in touch. I ghosted her. But she just sent me a message saying she just heard what happened and, you know this was probably for the best, right? And I feel like fucking screaming. I don't know if this is an update or just me venting. Thanks for listening either way. Edit, I don't want to sound melodramatic or sappy or anything, but you all brought me to tears. We keep hearing about how it is insanity to rely on the internet for personal connections, but I just lost a boyfriend, a best friend and a whole group of friends. And instead of feeling alone, I am more and more feeling like fuck yeah that was the right thing to do, I will be okay. It still hurts. But not as much as it would had I really been alone. I can't even begin to thank this sub. I really don't know what to say. Even on my previous post that didn't get as many responses, it was some of the comments there that made me approach the cheating thing knowing I had to break up and move on. So it changed my life at that moment. And considering I will be doing a lot of soul searching on toxic relationships, this probably changed my life for good. So thank you all so much for reaching out to a stranger. This community is so precious. And I got a gold, I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but I don't even know how much gold costs, and this is an alt account, so it won't really be used. Is there any way I can return it to the sender? Some of you are asking for an update. I might in a while, if there is something new to tell. Right now it's just more of the same. I don't think I will be able to answer all the comments, but I am trying to at least answer the ones with questions. Thank you. Notable comments. Commenter 1. Well yeah, I would just ditch that whole friend group and start trying to find new friends. My god, that's some fucked up shit. OP. Yep, done and done. I think I'm being too permissive with the word friend. It was going on for months, everyone knew, nobody had the decency to tell me. It was only the one friend who wasn't even that close who stood up for me. Commenter 2. You also can't make her hurt. She has no respect for you and clearly doesn't care. So it will be impossible anyways. It would have the same effect as a drunk stranger telling you that you're awful. It might make you angry but you didn't care about that stranger so what they say is irrelevant. Also, I can't imagine anything so utterly not worth your time. The delightful side effect of just ghosting is that they will stew in it. They want the reaction, but they get none. They realize they lost all their power and never get to know and feel that satisfaction that comes from getting the reaction you wanted. OP, oh, I get what you mean. She is still texting me. I didn't mention one detail cause it wasn't important. We were all traveling together soon. My family paid for some of Jessie's expenses. She is messaging me about the vouchers, since I have them all. This fucking woman can't even wait a day to ask. It's like she suddenly remembered she still needs me. I mean, I am not giving them to her either way. Trip is off, can't she tell? She has no respect for you and clearly doesn't care. Absolute truth. Commenter 3. She would be more hurt by no response at all. To anything, ever. OP, go no contact. OP. I'm very much thinking the silence treatment will be the way to go. I think she just realized she needs me for the trip. She has been aggressively trying to contact me. Now she is saying that she liked my best friend first, and I was the one who stole him, so she is the one who should be mad. I know I should just block her everywhere. But is it petty that I am having fun watching her squirm? I wanted to have the last word, but not saying anything is driving her crazy. Commenter 4. He said he just had sex with her to see if she would move on and leave him alone, and that it only happened a couple of times. Says he won't do it anymore, he doesn't even like her, he loves me, asking me to please forgive him. LOL, what? Seriously, that is one of the stupidest things I have heard. It is like saying, hey babe, I jumped off a cliff because somebody was really pestering me to do it. Edit, I feel for you OP, but what an excuse. OP, I confess I almost fell for it. How pathetic is that? He was saying he cared about me, it was just a mistake, he thought she would back off. And I felt it was a bad decision on his part, but maybe it made sense and I could forgive him. Then he said something like, and I didn't even like her, you were the one who always wanted us to hang. That's when my brain joined the party and I was like, is he seriously trying to blame this shit on me? More comments made by OP. Most disgusting part is that it is a trip we would take together with my best friend and some other friends. So she really thinks I would let my family pay for her to go on vacation with my ex who she cheated on me with. I'm starting to think this woman is sick. Like for real. I just went straight to venting, didn't I? Sorry. Well, it was all Pete really. After she texted she could get my best friend if she wanted to, I just answered back, WTF Jessie. And she lol'd as if it was a joke. After that, Pete texted me, asked me if I was alone. He was really kind, and told me everything. Said he had proof and asked if I wanted to see it. I said yes. He had gone after our friends and convinced them to send him prints. He's really well liked by everyone. And he was the one who said enough Pete is gay BTW, just in case anyone jumps the gun like my mom did and think he did this because he's interested in me or something. He's not. He is just a decent person. No, I didn't get prints between best friend and Jessie. I guess I went straight to venting and didn't give much details. Wasn't expecting this response. There was this friend Pete who convinced 3 other friends to send him texts between them, 3 friends, and either Jessie or best friend, so he could have proof, cause he thought what was happening was disrespectful and someone should tell me. There were prints of texts between 2 friends and Jessie. And 1 other friend and best friend. They were pretty clear. Jessie especially didn't seem to care about hiding it at all. Best friend texts were mostly wondering if I had noticed something. And wanting Jessie to back off, while saying she was hot, etc. There was nothing 100% confirmation on his side. It wasn't a talk between him and one of his closest friends, so it was kind of generic. But when I confronted him, I said I had prints, without saying what they showed, and he just confessed. I really appreciate the prints. It was ultimate evidence. But I don't think they did it for me. It's a Pete thing, you'd have to know him to understand. He's the stand-up guy who is everyone's friend. He is a huge person. I think they sent the prints because it was something, for him, you know? He was the one leading the charge and dealing with consequences. If it were just me, I don't think they would have done it. Update 3 I said I'd come back if anything relevant happened. EX best friend kept trying to get in touch through common friends. They kept asking me to unblock him and at least hear him out, cause he was really sorry, he loved me, he was a mess, he didn't mean to. Someone even went as far as to ask me if I was really sure it happened. They offered to send me prints of texts where he was talking about me, so I'd see how he always had great things to say and how much he cared. But I've had it with the print screen drama for life and said no. To the ones who insisted I told them I wasn't unblocking him, had nothing to say or hear, and if they kept pushing me, I'd block them too. I ran into my EX best friend at this book thing I go to often, hobby of mine. Maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I think he went there for me. He didn't really have any business there, but I'm just speculating really. He asked if I had a few minutes for coffee. I said I was late. He walked me to my car. He looked so good, smelled great. He was so sweet. Was even wearing his hair the way I like it. I feel horrible because even after everything, I still like him. He apologized some more. Said he knew I needed time and space but asked if I'd consider giving him another chance cause he would wait for me. Said he would never talk to Jessie again. And would act like they had restraining orders against each other. And I just found it really funny how everything he was saying required me trusting him. Which I don't. So I told him I wasn't interested anymore and he should move on. I wish I said something snappier or wittier. But I had nothing. This was Saturday. I haven't heard from him or friends since. I think that was that. Jessie also kept trying to talk to me. Like I told some of you in the comments, I had a trip coming up. It would have been me, Jessie, EX's best friend and a few friends. Since Jessie couldn't afford it, my parents paid for most of her expenses. She must have remembered this right after everything went down and panicked because I had everything, vouchers, confirmation emails, credit card info. She went crazy. Even showed up at my place. I wasn't home and my roommate told her to fuck off. Exact words. I didn't block her at first cause I admit I was having some fun watching her despair. I talked to my mom and she was amazing. Told me I should cancel everything even if it cost us money. It was fine. So I did. And for one last bit of print screen drama. I printed all the emails I got confirming cancellations and sent those to Jessie with the word bye, before blocking her. My roommate has been amazing. We were never really close and now I don't even know why. She canceled plans with her friends to stay with me and invited me to go out with them next weekend. A few of you suggested I see a therapist and I did, yesterday. I really liked it. It was just one appointment and I mostly just talked, but it felt good. She gave me homework. She talked a little about unhealthy and abusive relationships and asked me to think about my friendship with Jessie and try to point out what was healthy and what was unhealthy about it. Made me realize she was never really my friend. She was taking advantage of me for years and she even had me thanking her for it. Therapist also told me about this saying, I think that's what it is, called the narcissist's prayer, which goes something like, that didn't happen. If it did, it wasn't my fault. If it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, then you deserved it, which is totally how Jessie is handling this whole thing now. So good riddance indeed. And a final piece of gossip. Pete talked to me yesterday. He checks up sometimes, he's a good guy. Again, he is gay, in case someone is still thinking this might turn into a romantic comedy. He said Jessie was super sure that since I broke things off, she and Dean would hook up right away. But apparently he doesn't have the same plans and that freaked her out over the weekend. Pete says he really is a mess and went out drinking hard 4 nights in a row to the point he had to be carried home by his pals. And yesterday, they all went out for lunch at this burger place. Jessie was going to run her fingers through his hair or something and he just pushed her away and told her to stop and to never touch him again. Great that now he manages to do that, huh? I guess in the end he really did like me in his sick way. The thing is, I don't want to be with someone who likes me in a sick way. I want to be with someone who likes me in a healthy way. I think I deserve that. I am also thinking about taking the money I got back from the trip to go somewhere else by myself. Haven't decided yet. Anyway, this will be the final update on this, since it is unlikely that I will have anything new to add. Now I think I just need time to heal and let go, you know? I might come back in a few months if there is reason to do a yay life is awesome now post, but I wanted to post this update now cause I wanted to end this whole story on a bright note. And of course, thank you all again, you are the best. Too long, didn't read it's all good. As well as could be anyway, thanks Reddit. After discovering my brother's wedding was fake and being excluded, our once close bond is shattered, leaving me heartbroken. Me, 30F, and my brother, 31M, have always been as close as twins. Our closeness is a foundation in our family. One of the true consistent relationships, obviously not in a weird way. When we fight, which is never or small fights, the whole family feels it and tries to fix it because of how unnatural it feels for everyone. He gave me away at my wedding. I named a child after him. We have matching tattoos. We talk on the phone almost every day. He started planning his wedding. He asked me to be a groomsman, while his friend, 35-ish F, would be his best man. Everyone thought this was odd because of his role at my wedding, and none of us really know/have met his friend. I expressed how it hurt my feelings and was met with, my wedding isn't about you, okay. Fine, I'll do what you ask. During the planning he called me every day. We sent ideas. I helped with making stuff. I didn't mind. I decided early on to not focus on titles but just to make this day as amazing as possible for my brother. He asked me to be a flower fairy, because this was a gay child-free wedding. I agreed. During the process of shoe picking him and the best man would shoot down all of my ideas. She would send very basic heels that were around $100. Heck no. I told her my budget was $45 for shoes, especially for plain gold heels. The wedding party all had a very mean girl mentality. I felt it from day one. There was the wedding party, and then me. I chalk this up to not really knowing them well and proximity. All of them live in a different state than me. They even went as far as saying the shoes I like were too slutty. They were the type of small heels that place up around your calf or around your ankle. After this I begged to come as a guest, so I could wear what I want and not feel this weird mean girl mod mentality from the rest of the wedding group. My brother says no way, I can't get married without you being by my side. I get to the state the wedding will be and the first day I'm there I find out the best man had the bachelor party the night before I got there. Everyone from the wedding party was included aside from me. I let it go and focus on the wedding and doing my part. So, I slap on some wings, dance my way down the aisle and give my very first wedding speech. All goes well. The wedding was awesome until the drag show. Yes, they had a drag show at their wedding. During the show one of the queens comes on and basically announces that this was all fake because my brother and his partner had gotten married 1 year prior. I turned to the rest of the wedding party and asked did they know? They did. They were at the real wedding. Everyone but me. I'm sitting there trying to process and my mom, who gave them $3,000 for the wedding because they needed it, storms up to ask if I knew. I told her no, and she immediately switched to being supportive to me because of how bad the situation was. It's not about them already being married. They can do what they want. I myself spent over $4,000 on this wedding. Because I was coming from out of state I had to get a plane ticket. I paid for a week at an Airbnb. One night most of the wedding party stayed at the house I rented because they didn't have anywhere else to stay, and did not even offer to pay for any of it. The dress for the wedding. The fairy wings I handmade. All of it. I spent too much time and money on this wedding. But then I start to remember all of the lies. They got married. And 3 days after my brother was at my house while I gave birth to my last child because I always wanted him to be a part of my huge moments. He held my newborn, knowing he had just gotten married and said nothing. They gaslight me saying I was crazy feeling left out. Him saying he can't get married without me. Lying to my face every single day for a year. Just, all of it. After realizing all of this I tried to leave without making any sense. His husband mockingly asked me if I was mad. I said I'd talk to them another day and they should enjoy their night. I was able to leave without anyone else at the wedding knowing I was upset. Before I could leave the happy couple pulls me into a room. My brother is crying saying he didn't do this to hurt me. I keep it together. Say enjoy your night and we will talk another day. His husband says oh, so there is something to talk about then. I repeat we can talk another day. They ask me to brunch. I say I'll see if I'm up, ready for it when they go. The next morning I realize the whole wedding party and some guests are going to lunch. I choose not to go because I am not going to put myself in a situation where I am ganged up on. Again over my feelings about the wedding and wedding party. After that I left the wedding chat on Snap, which they were notified of. At this point it's the next morning and his husband starts blowing me and my friend, who was with me, up. We ignore and go about our day. I have not looked at or spoken to my brother since. Aside from short responses to get me to the airport the day I left. When I left I asked them to crop me out of the wedding photos as I didn't want to be associated with a fake wedding and I didn't want a reminder of how embarrassing it was and how stupid I looked. I told them I didn't want to speak to them again. My brother says nothing and his husband says you're a narcissist and I feel bad for the people who have to deal with you. Pretty sure narcissistic more aligns with tricking 100 people into coming to a wedding, some of the wedding that was paid for by other people. Just to tell everyone haha this was just a giant party for us. Joke's on you is probably more narcissistic than me reacting to the time, money, energy spent to attend a fake wedding. But, alright, lol, I just don't know where to go from here. I have them both blocked. There is a line in our family. My brother has not tried to fix it. He has the chance to show me what I meant to him. He did. And now I have to believe him. I'm going to try to update in sections. 1. I guess to answer if he is in an abusive relationship that really is up to each person to decide. I will not, and won't label him as abusive because I'm not in that relationship with them. My mentioning of the drag queens was because they are a part of the story. Hello, it was one of the queens that made the announcement. I'm not sure why some of you are taking that as me being anything phobic. Mentioning that somebody is gay, or that drag queens attended a wedding is a part of a story and it's factual. It's not anything phobic. Our family, as well as the new husband's family, have always been nothing but supportive and accepting. My mom has 2 kids who are very hurt. She could never hate my brother, but she definitely does not like the decisions that he has been making. She is doing her best to support her 2 children. Gay wedding. No kids allowed? 2 separate statements, lol. They definitely did not ban gay children from their wedding. LOL. I mentioned both of these things to explain why I was a flower fairy. No kids, flower girl. Fairy to go along with the gay dragon theme. Hello people. I proudly slap those wings on and dance my way down the aisle. That is definitely not anything phobic, lol. For those of you who are saying anything along those lines, you are definitely reaching and projecting. Using narcissistic when it actually does not apply to the person, in my opinion, is trying to weaponize more info in the comments top questions. For some reason, I cannot edit my post to add this, so hopefully most of you will see it. Me and my new husband, as far as I know, did not have any hard feelings going into the wedding. There was a time when they were dating that I expressed I didn't like the fact that my brother was working 2 jobs for a new husband to try to become a music producer. I watched my brother kill himself for years to try to support both of them while he sat around smoking weed in his studio, and ever since then new husband decided that I hate him, even though we have since squashed all of those issues when he got a job and started contributing. Even when we did not get along, I always made it very clear, if my brother loves you and I love you too. Both families have been very supportive. There's no homophobia or anything like that on either side. Is my brother in an abusive relationship? I don't know, I guess that's what each individual person would consider abusive. I don't want to label my brother's partner unfairly as abusive when I'm not in a relationship myself and my brother has never expressed feeling abused. I think if you consider this behavior manipulative and abusive, then that's up to your own discretion. However, I am not going to give anyone that label. I didn't decide this was a fake wedding. They did when they decided to announce in the middle of the ceremony that they were already married. They made it a fake wedding when they announced that it was fake. LOL. Hello. Russian bots. Pushing propaganda. Okay people, I only mentioned the fact that there was a drag show at the wedding because that is a very uncommon thing. I found out that my brother had been married for a year and had been lying to my face via drag queen announcements. That is just stating the facts. That has absolutely nothing to do with the drag community, or how myself, or anybody else should feel about them. They were paid to do a job and they showed up and did what they were paid to do. I have no ill will towards anybody in any type of community. Those of you who are saying to me, mentioning them comes off as judgmental. For those of you who think it's weird that I did not mention that he was gay. Why is that weird? And why is that relevant to the story? LOL. The people who had their panties in a wad probably have more of an issue with the community than I do. Stop making this post about anything other than what it is about. At the end of the day, I am mourning the loss of my brother. I am mourning the relationship that I thought him and I had. And to be honest, based off of my perspective of our closeness, I am honestly questioning my own sanity. Do you generally spend hours talking to somebody, getting matching tattoos, planning a wedding, being at holidays and childbirth with somebody that you're not close with? At least on my end, I did not make up how close I was with my brother if it was not reciprocated, and he is a very good actor. And honestly, me questioning our closeness has been the most hurtful part about this entire experience. It's made me question if I'm crazy or not. Gay wedding, child-free, 2 separate statements. It was not a wedding where they did not invite gay kids. LOL. For anyone who reads it like that, you are extra weird. My brother is obviously gay and got married to a man. Therefore, it is a gay wedding. Children were not allowed to attend the wedding there for a child-free. 2 separate things, people. Both are okay. And I also want to say that I would never have slapped fairy wings on my back and danced down the aisle if I was not 100% supportive of them. Please stop trying to make this an issue other than 2 siblings having a falling out. Another comment. Okay, ow. I feel like you are very much twisting the story, lol. I did not make sure everyone knew I was leaving the wedding. I actually left very discreetly at almost midnight when the wedding was ending at 1 a.m. I did not make my brother cry. His husband kept trying to force a conversation that I asked respectfully multiple times to not have the night of the wedding so that way it would not ruin their day. I showed up in every single thing my brother asked of me. I took the bullying, and it kept my mouth shut for most of it after I was accused of trying to make the wedding about me. From that point on, I went out of my way to do everything I could to make his day as special as I could for him. Comment about her husband. Brother tried to contact my husband to ask how to pay back what I spent to come to the wedding. My husband said that he was not going to get involved. Brother tried to convince my husband that I was overreacting. My husband told brother that is absolutely not true and I have every right to be upset and what he did was bonkers. My husband very much has been supportive but also is very sad to see me and my brother fighting like this. Update 1. I'm going to do my best to put as much information as I can but it ends up really long and Reddit will not let me post. So I'm going to try to answer all of the questions and I'm going to paraphrase a lot. The update is, there is no update. Things are the same, they are still blocked. One suggestion was that I should write him a letter, which I actually did the day after this happened and I left it in his room. I laid out all of my feelings and described them in detail. How hurt I was. We had a 2-hour drive where he said absolutely nothing even after reading my letter. I did end up losing all of my manners when I landed and my husband informed me that he sent him a message basically saying that I was overreacting. I said a lot of things that I was not very proud of. At the end of the day I stand by my truth, and I stand by my perspective of what happened. Please stop trying to make this a phobia issue. Both families have been nothing but supportive. They represent themselves, not an entire group of people. Stop being so simple-minded. The mention of drag queens was only there because one of the queens announced that they had gotten married a year ago. Plus, how many times do you see a drag show at a wedding? If you read some imaginary undertone, that is definitely a you issue. Moving on. New husband in my opinion is not somebody that I would label as abusive. However, abuse is subjective. I think this more falls down to him being very emotionally immature. I am not a yes man, I was for the wedding. That's an appropriate time to be a yes man. Outside of that, new husband has always been intimidated by my opinion. I think he knows I can see through his BS. Weak men hate strong women. That's a fact. And that's the case here. However, we did not have any type of beef on the wedding day. Or for years before. I made it clear that if my brother loves you and wants to spend his life with you then I support that. My mom is trying her best to be as supportive as she can to both of her kids. She could never hate my brother, although she absolutely hates what he did. As far as I go, I don't know who I am without my brother. He was just as important to me as my children and my husband. It was always me and him. To say that I am mourning is an understatement. This whole situation has made me question a 30-year relationship. Realizing his capability to live a double life that I'm not a part of has rocked to my entire world in my entire sense of reality. I'm not okay. I'm going to spend the next year being no contact. I'm going to go to therapy and get my mind, body and soul in the best place possible. While pushing as much good karma into the world as I can. Maybe then I will be able to decide if I want to close that door fully and permanently, or if I'm at a place where I'm willing to create a new normal with him. At the end of the day, I am absolutely devastated and heartbroken. I also want to address frequently asked things. 1. Baby was no fear of being overshadowed. The date that they got married was because it was a dating anniversary for them, nothing to do with me or my pregnancy. 2. I am aware that people get married and have a large ceremony later. That's okay. It's not what they did, it's how they did it. 3. I am not a Russian bot trying to push propaganda lol. Those comments did make me laugh though. 4. If I had the answer to why they would feel comfortable doing this to me then I guess I wouldn't be as dumbfounded as I am. I'm not leaving out any type of detail. Honestly, it would be a lot easier if I did something so horrible to deserve this because then I wouldn't have to wonder why. I'd know. At the end of the day I'm not okay. I don't know if there's anything he could do to fix this. I'll always wonder if he's telling me the truth or what he's hiding. After the way that his husband spoke to me, and after him allowing him to do that, I'm honestly so disgusted with both of them. I deleted the original post because I didn't want them to be attacked. Sadly, I still have a need to try to protect him. I don't know you guys. The brother-in-law appeared and made a comments in the original post. Brother-in-law here, I'll just start by saying for one, having a big wedding ceremony 1 year later was not my idea, but once we decided that we were going to do it, we consulted many times about telling people beforehand for fear of things like this happening. I've never had a great relationship with Op, but we've tried to make things work mostly for my husband, her brother, because I knew they were very close and I wasn't too fond of her due to our interactions in the past. I know how important those close relationships are and would never wish to tear that apart. Op didn't want to talk about it at all. We tried to apologize and explain that the intention was never for any humiliation or insult to anyone at all. But she wouldn't have any conversation about it, especially the night of. The next day at the Airbnb I tried to open a dialogue with Op about how she was feeling, and she only responded with snark and comments about how there's nothing to talk about. That's the small conversation where the "so there is something to talk about" statement was said by me. I eventually let it be and left the room. Everything that was said by her didn't help me or anyone understand really how she felt about it, and the little she did say seemed very self-centered and about how this was a plan to humiliate her specifically, which it most definitely was not. Reading through this now though, I do understand a bit more why she felt that way. And for that I truly am sorry. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure how these work or if there's a proper way to post this, but ask me anything. Reply. All I'm going to say is, you both are married now and you made your choice. You both are a partnership. You both collectively decided to do this and decided it was a good idea, and the consequences are, I want nothing to do with either one of you ever again. That's it. There is no reason or purpose to keep having an open dialogue about this because it's done. And you starting out your post with "you don't like me" pretty much confirmed everything that I said. I wish you and him nothing but happiness, but this conversation is over. I've heard your side of things and it still isn't good enough to justify what you both did. And I'm choosing to walk away from both of you. Another reply. He admits in the text above he knew. He literally says we didn't want to tell people because they were there and happy. He knew what he was doing. It was a huge manipulation. Lying to people to get what you want is manipulation. Omitting things from people to not give them the power to make a fair choice is also very much manipulation. They knew what they were doing. In the sentence the other people said, brother doesn't value sister the same way. That's it. That's the end of the argument. They both showed me exactly what I meant to them. The motivation behind it is not really important anymore. Maybe this was just a total oversight and a mistake, but regardless, the result was the same. And the consequence remains the same. I want nothing to do with y'all. I wish you happiness because I will always love you. If you make him happy, then I am so happy for the both of you. Truly I am. Our relationship was the sacrifice for this day and you both decided to make it. I reacted to it and was trying to sort through my feelings by posting on this podcast. I did not expect for it to go viral, so for that I'm sorry. I did try to remove the post, but it was too late. I realize that you don't like me due to past interactions. And that's fine. So what I'm about to say won't matter. My heart is completely shattered. I'm literally going through a mourning process like someone died. Because that night the relationship N and I had did die. He has always been my person. He isn't now, and I've never felt more alone. I honestly don't know if I'm going to be okay. Both of your responses just confirm everything I said and everything I felt. You have your side, I have mine. But ultimately everyone is feeling the loss of me and N. This changes everything in the family. I'm going to continue to root for both of you. Always. But I am going to do it from my side of the world. In an emergency either of you can call me and I'll be there. But outside of that, I am good with both of you. You don't like me, I'm out of your life now. You don't get to defer to Neva when it comes to me but want to orchestrate our conversation after he did what he did. You are not a safe place for me. Just like I'm sure you feel like I'm not either. You win. Go be with N. Go have a happy life. Update 2. If you're reading this you're here because you're super invested in my family's tea. LOL. But really, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay, or maybe I won't. Either way I am going to keep moving forward, and if you want to come along with me, you can follow me on TikTok. I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm just going to use it as a diary, /coping, safe space. My name on there is Tukari, 29. New update. I wish I could be writing that my brother had begged for my forgiveness. Those things somehow managed to go back to how they were. But they haven't. Nothing with my situation has changed. The only thing they truly changed was my perception of someone I thought I knew. I know a lot of people can't understand because you're not close with a sibling. But this has been like a true death for me. And sometimes my grief is so big I don't know what to do with it. He hasn't reached out, he hasn't explained. He hasn't even cared if I'm being fully honest, and what a mindfuck that has been. To go from someone being as important to you as your husband and children, to them showing you over and over how little you do, and ever did mean to them. He has doubled down on the "I didn't do anything wrong and you're overreacting." Which is honestly just the biggest slap in the face. If someone can't admit they did something wrong, then they will never actually be sorry, and the chances of behavior repeating itself are sky high. A lot of you pointed out our relationship might have only been this important to me, and I think you all were right. For a long time I cried every day. I cried during the times we would normally talk on the phone, or when a song reminded me of him. And sometimes I've cried for no reason at all other than just feeling like there is a hole in me now. But I find myself crying less and less. And sometimes when I think of him, my first thought that follows will be, wow, it's been days since he has even crossed my mind. And I guess that's progress, right? I'm not crying every day anymore. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still shedding tears. Tears he doesn't deserve, but they come anyway. Because that's the thing about unconditional love. It still exists even when the other person broke your heart. It doesn't go away. But sometimes the other person can just no longer have access to the unconditional anymore. We have spoken. Briefly. Over the phone during the holidays to deal with a family emergency involving another family member. It was pretty much all business. Everyone around us kept saying, "I'm so glad you guys are talking again." But we weren't talking again. We were just dealing with business. And I guess that's all the talking we will ever do again. At one point my husband chimed into our phone conversation and told him how much he misses him too, and he cried. I guess I forgot I wasn't the only one losing someone, but either way that doesn't change anything. My kids have not even noticed. He did try to send Christmas gifts to them through my mom, but only because I said something about him not acknowledging my son on his birthday. So is that all he'll ever be? Impersonal generic gifts that my kids get once a year? I told my mom to send them back and that they don't need a gift uncle. Honestly, they have enough of those on my husband's side. With that I also came to the realization that if you don't have a good respectful relationship with me, you absolutely do not get access to my children. And to be fully honest, he never really took that much interest in my kids anyway. I know he cares and loves them, but as far as a personal one-on-one relationship with them, let's just say the extent of how much he got to know them was always me telling him about them. So there really wasn't a deep pre-established relationship with any of my kids and him. And with him not being on good terms with me, or my husband, I'm not going to allow him access to my children. And I would honestly feel the same way and react to anyone this way. If someone shows you over and over again that they do not love and respect you, why would you allow them access to your kids? Especially if all they are is a gift once a year. I'm not healed. But I'm on my way. It's not better, but it's getting better. I feel I am suffering the consequences of someone else's actions. I was spiraling, but I am finding my new normal. I'll update again at the 1-year mark. I lost points in an English class debate for stimming, which my teacher found distracting. As someone with ASD, this felt unfair. I'm gonna sound annoyed in this post because, well, I am so mad about this, mainly because of both the conversation after as well. We had a debate in my English class. Okay, great. I need better skills in public speaking. I'm fine that I lost points from bad speaking skills, but what I'm mad about is the fact that I lost points on stimming. I didn't even know that was something he could take off, but he did. And that just seems unfair. He said it was distracting and he couldn't focus on what I was saying because I kept rocking back and forth and slightly punching the podium, which made too loud of a sound, etc. I don't think this is fair, like at all. And maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm upset over nothing. I talked to him today stating some things and stuff and getting clarity and asking for extra credit and stuff. He said that, I need to present myself better, and I need to make eye contact, stop stimming, and just socially act my age. Which? I think it is uncalled for. I'm diagnosed with ASD, I have an IEP for that, nothing academic related, this is an honors class. Anyways. Again, maybe I'm just making it a bigger deal than it is or being a crybaby. I've cried for the past 3 hours over the last 2 days on how much I hate myself that I can't be normal. Is this fair? And what should I do? Comments from OP. I'm not technically failing the class now, but it definitely feels like failing. My grade went down from a 90 to a 79. I can't take dual enrollment without an 85 or higher. This is just honors English. Too, however, I've been telling both this teacher and another teacher about how I want to take the criminal justice dual class. I have everything to take the class except if I can't get this English grade up. Plus, I basically planned my whole life out, and the only time I can take the dual class is next semester if I want to take the APs I want in senior year. Which may be why I'm so butthurt over 4 points that I lost from stimming. 'Cause that makes a difference. Even if it's small, it was 50% public speaking / 50% actual research topics. He actually said my arguments were really good, I used good sources and I explained things well. But my public speaking part killed the grade. I lost points on poor presentation overall. So for example, poor eye contact, speaking clarity, repeating sentences, which I also am annoyed about because I repeated one because I was stumbling over my words. However, 4 points to an already poor grade is a lot. My teacher took off points for stimming. Update, posted on November 27, 2023. I posted a post about 10 days ago discussing how my English teacher took points off my presentation during a debate because of stimming. So I thought I should update you guys on what occurred after. For one, I discussed it with my teacher on my own. I wrote an extra credit proposal, which he granted. I ended up getting a 5-point extra credit assignment over Thanksgiving break. I had to tell a speech to my family about the importance of gratitude and what it means to me. Secondly, I talked to my dad and stepmom, which they both not the happiest. We ended up talking to him. While he won't change my grade for the major, he is giving me a chance to make up for minor grades. If I do some extra work etc., 2 minor grades will become 100s. My teacher took points off my debate for stimming. Update to the update, posted on December 18, 2023. First and foremost, I brought my grade up from a 78 to a 90. I know that grades aren't everything, but honestly I can't be more excited about this. I also got a 100 on my state EOC, which I know probably had a huge curve, but still. I was extremely nervous about it. Secondly, we ended up adding stimming onto my IEP. The person who does my IEP was annoyed that we even had to specify it since she thought it was common sense. Lastly, the teacher got to talk about the importance of inclusion in his classroom and also to better understand some neurodiversity disorders in better detail. That yours truly helped write, since mental disorders and psychology is one of my special interests. Anyways, that's about everything that has happened. My last day of school was Friday, meaning I am officially done with this teacher for the rest of my high school career, and I can happily say, I am very excited to not have to deal with him anymore. Edit, y'all. This was an English class, not a debate class. Specifically English 2 honors. Probably should have mentioned that. I punished my son for a cruel prank on an autistic girl, straining our relationship. Now, he lives with my ex-husband, who is suing me for child support. I, F48, have a son Jack, M19, and a daughter Alyssa, F18, and am married to Tom, M50. Tom is Alyssa's father, but Jack's father is my ex-husband Dan, M48. Dan and I had a pretty ugly custody fight, and he lives in NY while we live in TX. Over the years Dan has unsuccessfully tried to get Jack to move in with him. It wasn't easy to fight him off since he is a very successful lawyer. Jack is a pretty popular kid in school. His friends on the wrestling team came up with a prank for him to ask a heavily autistic girl who had a crush on him to the prom as a joke and for him to show up wearing a gorilla suit. Jack originally said no, but the wrestling team actually raised a fund which got to be somewhat north of $800 for him to do it, and they paid for the gorilla suit. Jack agreed. If it matters, this is very out of character for him. After the prom, I was looking around on Instagram and saw pictures of him in the gorilla suit and was surprised that he didn't take his girlfriend Jess. After reading the comments, I learned what happened. To say I was furious doesn't even do it justice. I woke Jack up as soon as I saw it and screamed at him until my lungs give out. Then when Tom heard what was going on, he joined in. Tom and Jack have never gotten along. I can't prove it, but I suspect Jack's father Dan has a hand in that. Jack told Tom, "Fuck off, I'm talking to my mother." So we took away all of Jack's electronics, his phone, and we had paid for a car for his graduation present. Because of his prank and disrespect to Tom, we instead gave it to Alyssa. We also forced him to give us the $800 plus, and we gave it to his date and made him write a letter of apology. He was also grounded for a month, and we canceled his 18th birthday party. When Jack's birthday cake, there was a knock at the door. It was Dan, and he had suitcases. Tom said, "What is this? The custody agreement says you don't get him on this birthday." Dan just looked past Tom and said, "Hey kid, I'm here for the jailbreak." He then pointed at a Mustang and said, "Hope you like Fords. You can practice driving your new car on a road trip back to NY. Let's take a detour to NOLA." The two of them were laughing, high-fiving and backslapping, and they just ignored us as we tried to intervene. The only time Dan acknowledged me was to look me in the eye and say, "As cold as ice, checkmate." And for Jack to yell as they were driving off, "Fuck off, Tom." Since then, Jack has gone totally no contact with me. He talks a little bit to Alyssa, and from the little he does tell her, he's doing well, and Dan is giving him the royal treatment, bringing him to steakhouses, Yankees games, and just giving him outright cash. It has been almost a year, and I'm going crazy thinking I've lost my son. So AITA. Edit. I see there's a little confusion here about whether Alyssa is my bio daughter or stepdaughter. She is my stepdaughter. We really have a mother-daughter relationship to the point where it doesn't even occur to me to call her my step. At the risk of understatement, Jack never warmed to Tom the same way. Note from me. Edit. People have pointed out I should have provided more context regarding OOP's comment section. I didn't originally think this was necessary, but it's clearly been told to me that was wrong. I can't remake this thread, but I can add what I feel are relevant comments. On thought process behind the punishment, he never really got into that much trouble and is largely a good kid. He'd sometimes get into fights, but that all cleared up a few years ago. We'd usually just ground him and make him do extra chores, and that was enough. But it didn't come up a whole lot. Recently, It was maybe grounding him for a weekend here or there for a badly blowing curfew. Be home at 11 and he rolls in at 12:45. I can't say I had a fully formed plan on what the discipline would be for the prank alone since it all kind of happened at once, but to me at least, the big thing was the prank, and telling Tom to fuck off definitely mattered but was small potatoes compared to that. But less so to Tom, for obvious reasons. On Dan, OOOP's ex-husband, and his motivation. There is some truth here. I wasn't very kind to Dan when the marriage broke down and could have been more equitable with custody matters in the divorce, which created a lot of bad blood from Dan's side. As much as I'd like to agree that I just have to wait for Dan to get sick of throwing money at Jack, I can't deny that Dan actually does pretty well by Jack, and also that he likely isn't going to be running short on money anytime soon. I spent every day with Dan for so many years and know that man very well. He is an extremely calculating man. His exact thought process was that he saw the perfect opportunity to take his son back after years of feeling slighted through the divorce process and then hit with everything he had. It worked. Dan always plays the long game, just like I'm sure he's going to play the long game to keep things the way they are. More on Dan. As much as I'd like to demonize Dan, and there are a lot of things I can really say about him, he does truly love Jack and has really wanted custody for a long time. If it was simple gamesmanship, I think he wouldn't have been so brutal about it. He truly feels I stole his son. On the extent of the punishment and Jack's relationship with Tom, stepfather. The story with Tom was that my son just never respected him as any kind of authority figure. Even as a young child, if Tom would tell him to do something, he'd tell Tom that he was just a rude guest in his house. I can't prove it, but I have to think Dan had a hand in it. How else would Jack know that it was my money from the divorce that bought the house and that Tom was broke? Also funny you mention about my son calling Dan with his side of the story. I have no idea how he did that. I had his phone locked away for 2 weeks when that happened. I suspect that his GF Jess somehow had a hand in it, even though he was barred from seeing Jess. Part of the reason I think that is this arrangement works out so well for her. She is going to NYU for college, and somehow Dan pulled some stunt to get Jack into Temple in Philly, so they take turns spending weekends with each other in either NY or Philly. Dan's Instagram post from last week was the three of them having dinner together at Peter Luger's. On money troubles and child support issues, I just feel so stupid. I know Dan. He has been waiting years for an opportunity like this, and I handed him the perfect storm. I am not proud of it, but I did not treat Dan very well towards the end of the marriage. To be clear, I never cheated on him though. But he has hated me since then. Also, since he doesn't live with me anymore, child support is terminated. We divorced in New York, where child support goes to 21. I don't know how I'm going to make next month's mortgage. Dan is a very high earner, so it was a big check. He can actually go after me now for child support, and my lawyer tells me he has already filed the paperwork for that. More on child support. Tom is on disability. I knew I'd have a problem in 3 years when Jack aged out of child support, but I was hoping Tom would be back to work by then. Unfortunately, I am very familiar with the way child support works. You have a number for household income which gets negotiated after it gets to a certain point because the law says you stop counting dollar for dollar above a threshold. Then after that total is arrived, you split by relative income. I do pretty well, but not like Dan. I used to do better before COVID. At the time of the divorce, I won a very high household income split. It was good for me back then since he had to pay me. Now I have to pay Dan my portion of that very high number. So I get the double whammy of losing the checks I was getting, and now I have to write big checks his way. On Tom and Jack's difficult relationship. I tried to introduce Tom slowly and things started out okay. They were never warm, but it was peaceful. Things started getting rougher when Tom moved in. He had an accident at work and got behind on bills. It was a little sooner than we would have liked, but Jack had known him for a year at that point. It started with little things, like Tom telling Jack to clean his room, or put away his plates or mow the lawn. Jack just wouldn't do it. I'd noticed that every time Dan flew down to spend a weekend with Jack, it got a bit worse. I remember a few years ago overhearing Jack on the phone call Tom my pet loser. A phrase I know Dan has used about others before. When Jack was 16, there was one time that Tom's back was hurting and he told Jack to warm him up with a plate of leftovers, and Jack was playing a game and told him to get it himself. Tom unplugged his Xbox and then Jack said, "This fucking guy, he stays here for free, eats free food, and now even thinks he has a butler. This isn't a fucking hotel, Tom, you can't afford one." Then another time when Tom told him to mow the lawn and Jack said, "Don't tell me to mow the lawn at my own house, you mow the lawn and make me a sandwich when you're done." Jack isn't like this with anyone else. He's usually very kind, quick-witted and gracious. The thing that freaks me out is that he is almost exactly like his father. If he likes you, He'll be as debonair and smooth as can be. But if he doesn't, he really doesn't. And he truly hates Tom. More on their relationship. The end of the marriage wasn't pretty. I have to take responsibility for that, and the divorce was very contentious. Following that, there was a lot of bad blood, but it definitely got worse once Tom entered the picture. Tom once made a Facebook joke about how he wishes they would bring back paddling in schools. To say Dan went nuts does not cover it. He literally got on a plane immediately from New York, busted into my house and started making all kinds of accusations and threats against Tom. Tom had to literally lock himself in the bathroom and escape out the window because we all thought Dan was going to do something crazy. Following that, I had to spend the next 2 years in litigation proving that Tom never has and never will lay a hand on Jack. Jack has also been rubbing it in Tom's face that has his father's permission to defend himself against Tom if he ever wants to get old-fashioned with him. Jack is a 6-2 wrestling champion and MMA hobbyist. Tom is a 50-year-old man with a bad back half his size, and they are both keenly aware of it. If Tom ever laid a hand on Jack, I'd see to it that he'd be in jail. But I suspect his first stop from any such encounter would be the trauma ward. Yet more on their relationship. There is a little culture clash between Jack and Tom. Tom is an old-fashioned Texas man where he believes kids should do what they're told. Jack grew up in Manhattan. Believe me, Tom has way dialed things down from what he'd normally do, but he does believe that kids should listen to adults and help out around the house. He realizes that there is a lot of tension and that his usual approach isn't going to work, and I have even told him that if he tries it, I won't be able to maintain the marriage if he can't find a way to make a peaceable home with my son. After I told him that, he mostly just tried to step out of any kind of parental role, but sometimes, he'd still tell Jack to do something and Jack would react very badly. Jack acknowledging his wrongdoing, but still feeling the punishment was way too harsh. Thanks. He has blocked my number. Alyssa does still talk with him a bit since they had a cordial enough relationship. She even offered to give him the car back to make peace. He told her to keep it since he has a better car now and told her that he doesn't have any bad blood against her. For a while he was telling her that he'd never forgive me. He appreciates that he did wrong, but that I took it way too far by taking the car away and because I wouldn't let him see his GF for a month. The last time Alyssa brought it up, there was some movement on that. He said maybe sometime in the distant future, but not for years. So Alyssa is acting as a bit of a back channel. However, she's still so young and I don't like asking her to be in the middle of it, which must be hard because it really pains her how she sees Jack as a big brother and how bad Jack's relationship is with her father. OOP on apologies and potentially fixing this. I don't know if I agree with all of this, but for what it is worth, I have tried offering apologies. He has blocked my phone, but I sent him emails where I apologized for giving his car to Alyssa, for screaming at him, for trying to force a relationship with Tom on him and for taking the money. He has never responded. You do have a good suggestion though, apologizing to Dan. Dan hates me. To take some accountability, the reason for the divorce is I didn't treat Dan very well during the marriage. He resented the custody schedule. He thought the child support was far beyond what was needed to support Jack, and he made no bones about the fact he considered me to have stolen his money and his son. But with all that said, the worst he can do is hang up on me. Update: I was denied an official update, but a few of you cared enough about all of this to ask me for updates periodically, so here it is. On the advice of some of the posters, I reached out to Dan to see if he'd be willing to consider brokering peace between me and Jack. About a week later I got a response telling me to meet him and Jack at a cafe in Manhattan. He arranged a 6 a.m. flight and put me in a dodgy hotel in probably the most dangerous neighborhood in NYC. I arrived and saw Dan, Jack's GF Jess, and his friend from a past firm, Jonathan. I noticed Jess had an engagement ring on her finger. Jonathan said Jack has a claim against me for stealing the $840, and until that is resolved, I am not to contact him, but to only contact Jonathan. I told Jonathan that's the money his friends paid him for the prank and that I gave to the girl. Jonathan said he was aware of the circumstances, but nonetheless it wasn't my money and under the law it was a theft and Jack has a legal claim against me. I said I don't care if it was against the law, Jack had no right to that money and they could sue me if they wanted. Jack said, "You locked me up in my room like a prisoner for a month, took the car bought for me with Dad's child support money, took the money and berated me for hours on end. Unless you're going to give me the car, this is the only thing you can undo. You said you wished we could have handled it better, so here is your chance. Or was that just bullshit lip service?" I told him I was sorry, but I can't do it. Jonathan then gave me a cease and desist letter telling me to not contact Jack and to address all communication to Jonathan. Then Jack and Jess left and I asked Dan if he could talk for a minute. I asked him if he brought me there to humiliate me, and he said actually no he didn't. He brought me so I could humiliate myself. He'd actually worked very hard to get Jack to the point where he'd be open to talking to me again if I were willing to back down just a little. But since he knew that if I had to choose between my indignation and my own son, that I'd choose my indignation every time, just like I did in our marriage. I asked him why he'd put us all through that. He said it was because a part of him wondered if I'd ever learn to pick love over anger. He bet his future that I wouldn't when he divorced me. So he had to see for himself how it actually turned out after all these years later. I asked him if Jack was just a pawn in his game. He said no, if I actually would have picked Jack, he'd be with me now and there would have been nothing anyone could have done to stop it. But instead, my indignation over a stranger was more important to me than learning to move on with my own son. I asked him what about the girl. He then said, I hope she'll be a wonderful daughter to you since you lost a son for her. I told her I don't know the girl. So then he said, sounds like a bad trade, and left. Also, I'm apparently not invited to Jack's wedding. At this point I posted thanks for posting the update. I'm a little confused why you weren't willing to pay the money. These are some quotes from comments you said earlier. If you lose your only child, nothing else really matters. I didn't understand that before. Hopefully you never do. On if you would be willing to divorce Tom to get Jack back. If I had to, yes. Truthfully, that's kind of been falling apart anyway, and the only reason I haven't divorced him is because I don't want to lose Alyssa. I should never have touched the car. I should have just grounded him, insisted on the apology, and maybe also made him hand over the money. Losing a relationship with a child is a hell of a thing. It is like death. I hate what he did, but there is nothing worth losing a child over. I lost my son for that girl who I don't even know. Exact words were high road, low road, I don't care. Whatever wins. The irony is that now I'm sitting where he was, except worse. I'd do anything for him back. So after all that, you weren't willing to give Jack his $800 back. Where is the disconnect here? If you are really willing to do whatever it takes, then why weren't you willing to do this? And her response? I was so angry. I am still so angry. He was sitting there, smug as can be, with his little girlfriend, my ex, and my ex's best friend there as his lawyer. At that moment, I just couldn't. The whole thing was to humiliate me. They stuck me in a crack den of a hotel, made me trek all over New York, then they all show up laughing and backslapping, and the lawyer tells me I can't talk to my own son unless I pay him $800. I just don't even know what to do anymore. Dan reversed the polarity on the child support, and I'm now a few months behind on the mortgage, and the hole gets deeper and deeper. I placed my house for sale on the market. I'm just at wit's end. I'm 15 weeks pregnant with our poly family's second baby, and here I am thinking of running away from the family that we've created. Married for 9 years, me and my husband have been doing the polyamory thing for 4 years now. This started when my husband confessed to having feelings for one of our mutual friends. He really sold me on the idea of a poly triad, and we started living together. My family disapproved and stopped visiting us. That hurt, but things were okay. I did struggle with some jealousy issues. Although I told my husband that I was open to dating someone new and bringing the new person into our fold, in reality, I wasn't ready at all. The guys I liked quickly distanced themselves romantically as soon they heard that I was a married female in a non-monogamous relationship. It was hard. As for the guys who were okay with my situation and pursued me, I wasn't attracted to them. Things changed in 2017 when my husband's girlfriend became pregnant with my husband's first child. I love the kid, I really do. She calls me maman and loves me a lot. Right around the same time, my company promoted me. I went from working 4 hours a day to essentially living 4 months out of my state. I immersed myself in my work, and in 2019 my husband talked about having one of our own to complete the family. Fast forward to June 2020, I find out I'm pregnant and we're having a boy. We had a big gender reveal and everything. The kiddo knows that she's getting a baby brother. I'm currently 15 weeks along, and 2 nights ago, my company offered me a permanent position in the new city. Because of COVID, they had to lay off many people, and they now need more people in leadership roles. From a career standpoint, it would be foolish of me if I let this opportunity go. But if I do that, it would break my family apart. Right now my husband and his girlfriend are working on the baby room, and I'm here sitting conflicted. I'm really tempted to take up the job offer and run away from the life that we've created. I'm also secretly contemplating an abortion. My friend thinks that I should take up the offer. He thinks I'm unhappy with my life and that a change would do me good. I would be working with him if I take up the offer. I have friends in that city, so I know that I wouldn't be alone. I'm really stressed out thinking about it. What should I do? Commentator asks. This whole situation stems from the fact that you became poly under duress by nature of your cheating husband. You don't become poly because you have someone else lined up already. All these people telling you to just work it out fail to see that you were coerced into this situation. I'm baffled why you let it go on so long, especially since you didn't have a kid together, but I suppose it is your visceral desire for stability. I would get an abortion and go create a life you actually enjoy instead of this day-to-day, colorless life of acceptance you've tolerated for way too long. OP comments. This was blunt and maybe the honest response that I needed. My husband and his girlfriend swear that they didn't start a romantic relationship until I was fully in the loop of things. But to be really honest, I don't know. Maybe they did start out by cheating. But that ship has sailed and I accepted the situation. So looking back on that won't help my situation. But I do feel that I need a fresh start now. Away from the mundane life that I have. 15 weeks pregnant, I'm getting an abortion next week and moving on from my poly family. I made a post a few days ago about being conflicted with a new job offer and an existing pregnancy. Just thought I'd share it here first. Last night I accepted the job offer and I'm getting an abortion next week. My friend is helping me every step of the way. I'll be filing for divorce in a week or two. I've had great years with my poly family and my husband, and now it's time for me to make the jump and dive into the unknown. Thanks to all the people who sent me supportive PMS and helped me make my decision. And yes, I did talk to a therapist via Zoom. That session helped me clear my head in a way that I hadn't felt before. And, no, I haven't talked to my husband. I will talk to him after I actually get the abortion procedure done. I'm really focused at this moment and don't want conflicting opinions to derail my journey. So I will talk to him after it's all done. Thank you. OP comment. I'm not poly. My husband became poly a couple of years into our marriage when he fell in love with a mutual friend, and I went along with it because I wanted to please my husband and I was afraid of our marriage breaking up. He was, and is, my only partner and I was terrified of losing him. Clearly, that was a mistake and it built a lot of resentment inside me over the years which I couldn't understand or justify to myself. I finally aborted my 15-week pregnancy and I'm ending my polyamorous marriage. I moved out this Wednesday. If you check my post history you would know what I'm talking about. Just an update for the people who reached out to me. I did get an abortion last week, on Friday. I finally told him this week, on Wednesday. I'd never seen him so broken. It broke my heart to see him cry, but I had to do it. His girlfriend hugged me, little kiddo hugged me and bid me goodbye. My husband refused to talk to me. I'm waiting for him to reach out. I'm giving him space right now. I'm at peace and I don't regret my decision. With this I'm bidding my poly lifestyle a final goodbye. Thanks to all the people here who supported me. We broke up just after a month of dating because my boyfriend gave me a very bad and sexist book. Now I'm happy with my same-age husband. I met my boyfriend in our master's program. We became friends over this past year and started dating and becoming serious shortly before I left the state for a summer internship. He gifted me a book to read, saying it was one he liked. It's A Spell for Chameleon, by Piers Anthony, a fantasy novel written several decades ago. I knew nothing about it prior, and began laughing at it 2 pages in because of how ridiculous the writing was, especially about women. We Skyped after I got through the first chapter, and I tried respectfully explaining my doubts about the book. He made a deal with me. Knowing I'm a big Harry Potter fan, he promised to give the HP series a chance, starting with Philosopher's Stone, if I gave his book a chance and kept reading. This rocked my world, and I had a sudden burst of motivation. I'm on chapter 3, and I cannot stand this book. It is one of the most sexist and misogynistic texts I have ever had to read, and it honestly makes me feel like crap. Not to mention it's just poorly written all around, painfully spoon-feeding obvious symbolism, and excessively throwing in fantasy creatures concepts that do nothing for the plot. The protagonist is a complete dillhole that I couldn't care less about, and as a reader, I don't want to follow him or anything in the fantasy world of Xanth. But of course, flat out telling my boyfriend those thoughts about a book he enjoys would be hurtful, and he has every right to have different preferences. I am shocked that he would recommend such a book to me though. He is a respectful and educated man, treating me very well and identifying as a proud feminist. This recommendation was out of left field. Does he not remember how hurtful the author's writing on women is? Did he read it at a young age, and has since grown? I can't expect him to hold his end of the bargain and read Harry Potter, which is fine, especially if it means not having to put myself through Piers Anthony's excuse for writing ever again. I like my boyfriend a lot. How do I respectfully tell him why I cannot invest in this book anymore? It's important to me that he realizes the negative messages being suggested, but I want to do this without insulting his taste or making him feel at fault. TL Doctor, boyfriend gave me a book to read and I accepted. I think it's sexist and poorly written. How do I tell him that I cannot keep reading? Should I explain my concerns? Relevant comments. OP explains why the book is horrible. Example 1. I like beautiful girls, he said. And I like smart girls, but I don't trust the combination. I'd settle for an ordinary girl, except she'd get dull after a while. Sometimes I want to talk with someone intelligent, and sometimes I want to. He broke off. Her mind was like that of a child. It wasn't really right to impose such concepts on her. Example 2. That's the point, he said. I like variety. I would have trouble living with a stupid girl all the time, but you aren't stupid all the time. Ugliness is no good for all the time, but you aren't ugly all the time either. You are variety. And that is what I crave for the long-term relationship, and what no other girl can provide. Example 3. All women are the same inside, they differ only in appearance and talent. They all use men. Example 4. That whole rape trial in Chapter 3. Example 5. Other girls manage to enhance their appearance by cosmetics or padding or specialized spells, but besides Sabrina all other females look somewhat artificial. She was no enemy. This was the PG-2 example I mentioned. Example 6. There was much more of her he longed to see, and to touch, but that could come only after marriage. She was that sort of girl, and it was part of her appeal. The girls who had it didn't need to put it on casual display. PG-3, Mikatoba. Oh good lord. I looked up the book and thought, this couldn't be that bad, could it? I guess it is that bad. Top comment. The first thing to ask is when he last read this book. If, like you said, he hasn't read it since adolescence, he may not remember how truly awful it is. If he's read it recently and still recommended it, well, I'd be totally honest about how I felt about it. But that's just me. You can certainly just tell him you gave it a fair shake, but it wasn't your cup of tea. Update. The post was locked shortly after I put it up, so I wasn't able to comment back to most of you. I went through every comment and took them all into consideration. Thank you all for your thoughts. We Skyped the other night and the topic came up. I started by saying I liked him a lot and really do appreciate how much he's willing to share with me. He caught on to where I was going with this and started laughing. Then I started laughing. And I realized how silly small of a thing this all was. I guess I didn't want to risk hurting his feelings. When the reason why I didn't like the book came up, I explained, and he totally understood. It's been at least a decade since he's read the book, and he can see where I would feel uncomfortable. He will still consider reading the first HP book, since I gave his book a chance. And being a single dad, his kids also like the series, so it would be a chance for him to connect more with them. I ended by saying that I hope this doesn't discourage him from sharing more things he likes. If anything, it encourages me to find more that you'll appreciate. Q heart flutters. TLDR, good talk, he's awesome. New update. Hi. I would reply to this under the username you lazy chickbum, but it got locked a little over a year ago. Reddit banned me for sharing a mayor's office contact information lol, and I created this one shortly after. It's hilarious this post is being shared because it's from such a different time in my life. Your instincts are right. This relationship only lasted a month after this post. I took an opportunity to live and study abroad for a few months and it was clear that he didn't want anything that deep, dodged any conversation that required vulnerability, didn't like that I wasn't always 100% perky, etc. I also had a rough breakup before this and wasn't making the best judgment calls when it came to dating. I could have caught a few more things about him that give similar concerns now as this book recommendation then. So I called it off. Oh my god, then he suddenly wanted to make it work, and kept it up for over a year after the breakup. We weren't even together that long. He would text me as if we never ended, and I would shut it down. He eventually stopped, but I still get occasional notifications on LinkedIn that he viewed my profile. I'm now happily married to someone my age, not knocking appropriate relationships with age gaps. I'm good friends with a couple who are 12 years apart, but I dodged a bullet, folks. Thanks for giving me a good laugh with this flashback. During Friendsgiving, I discovered my husband and his two friends had a hot tub pee game where they peed in the hot tub while I was in it. Last night we did a small Friendsgiving at my husband's parents' house who are out of town. It was mainly centered around his boyhood social circle, most of whom still have a family that live in the neighborhood. After we got done eating, a few of us decided that it would be nice to relax in the hot tub and look at the lights of the city. We had been there for maybe 5 minutes and my husband said, "Everyone ready?" His two friends gave a thumbs up and then in succession they each said done. My husband's friend Sakim said it was done last and they all started laughing and the other two said, "Okay, we'll buy the next round." It was an obvious inside joke, so I asked what they meant and they started laughing and explained the hot tub pee game that they had been playing since they were like 5 years old. I wanted to throw up and asked if they seriously all just peed in the hot tub. My husband said yes and it's no big deal. I was disgusted, so I got out, took an hour-long shower and went to sleep in his sister's old bedroom and decided I didn't want to talk to him until today. Today I feel like I've calmly approached him and tried to explain how dirty he made me feel. How unsanitary it was and how, while I appreciate that he has these long-running rituals with his friends, he needs to stop the ones that would make him laugh in middle school and for certain leave me out of them. All he keeps telling me is relax, you're making way too big a deal of this. I am sick of hearing him make excuses for this disgusting and childish behavior. How do I approach him to make him appreciate that I need him to never do this again? Top comment. Competitive_cuddling. Next time you're on your period, mark his forehead with your blood like Rafiki did Simba to assert dominance. Update post. I posted about this on Friday morning. We spent all day Friday fighting about how not only was it disrespectful but that he refused to even acknowledge my issues with literally being peed on. Around 10 p.m. I told him that if he said you're making way too big a deal of this one more time, I was going to file for divorce. He said it almost like he was daring me. TLDR, my mom and I are going to talk to an attorney today. My dad is a partner in his accounting firm and he thinks that since we are young and don't really have much, the divorce should be very quick and simple. My STB ex-husband has tried to call God knows how many times to apologize and saying he gets it now, but it's way too late for that. It was too late for that when he and his friends did the initial act. I have more self-respect than that. Relevant comments. Commenter. Well, I think it had less to do with the peeing and more to do with dismissing how you felt about it. He kept saying it's not a big deal, but he could have just been apologetic and understanding from the start. OP. When I approached him on Friday morning to calmly talk about this, if he would have said, I'm sorry, that was very rude of us and I will never do this type of thing ever again no matter who I'm with, I could have easily gotten past this. Commenter. Good for you. I do not understand people saying this is an overreaction. The person who is supposed to always have your best interests closest to his heart demonstrated that he doesn't care about your consent, he doesn't care about your boundaries, he doesn't care about your feelings. Like, why stay married to someone who can't even meet the baseline for decency? The only way I would consider staying would be a promise from him to seek therapy individually and as a couple, and he would need to apologize to you in front of those friends. And explain to those friends that what they did was not okay and why. And end that dumb childish game for good. And take a course in boundaries and consent. OP, I think if he were to come up with your second paragraph, on his own, not guiding him, I might be able to forgive him and cooperate. I also think he should ditch his childhood friends and grow up, but again I'm not going to lead him to that decision. Commenter. I'd be careful of anything he says now though, as he could find this post, see your comment and just tell you exactly what you want to hear. OP, for sure, he's on Reddit all the time and even listens to Reddit posts on YouTube, but I should have clarified the time for him to do that was Friday. Now I'm so over it. Commenter. Info, have you texted your soon-to-be ex-in-laws to let them know they gotta clean their hot tub? OP, I sent my MIL an email but I don't think she read that part because she only responded with how heartbroken she is that I'm divorcing her son and she felt like she deserved an explanation. I did my part warning her about the dirty hot tub, but I don't owe her anything. Commenter, not your fault she's not going to listen and continue to chill in bubbling stale pee. I mean that it is funny that she wants an explanation like a woman. Your son and his friends all peed in your hot tub while I was in it. Like if she's cool with that, she needs to reconsider her bar on hygiene. Ain't your circus and ain't your monkeys anymore. OP, to be fair, I didn't tell her about him peeing on me. I don't ever want to bring that up to anyone, unless it's needed in the divorce for me to get spousal maintenance, so unless he told her, which I really doubt, I don't know is the real reason. But like you said, it's not my thing anymore. He can tell her whatever he likes. Editor's note, spousal maintenance is the same thing as alimony. On spousal maintenance, I've supported him through a master's degree. I think state law says I'm entitled to 40% of his salary for half the number of years we were married. It will help me take some time off, get over the divorce and get on my feet again. Commenter, how long have you been married for? OP, just over 5 years. Commenter, deleted. Your husband dodged a bullet there. OP, I truly hope he feels that way. Judging by the 57 texts he's sent me just this morning. I don't think he does. Commenter, downvoted. LOL, are you guys seriously trying to defend this lady's delusional 5-year-old mind? Just say it out loud, I am getting a divorce because my husband peed in a hot tub. OP. I've been saying to myself for 3 days now and it sounds more right than ever. Commenter, downvoted. It's pretty obvious you do not love him lol. It's cool if you want to bail but threatening divorce in the middle of an argument is petty as fuck. OP, I loved him very much until Friday when he said you're making way too big a deal of this, for the 10000 the time. Then I was over it. Mini comment update, a few hours later. We are meeting with a lawyer in an hour. My mom keeps telling me to document everything as it will turn out better for me money-wise. My husband is in love with his student, he is a piece of trash, and I have no fucking idea what to do. My husband and I, both 35 years old, met in college. We fell in love and got married 8 years back. I gave birth to our daughter in 2020. My husband is a professor at this med school, he's a doctor himself. My friend Sarah also works in the same college, and she's in the same department as my husband. Few months back in December, Sarah took me out for lunch and told me that she suspected something's going on between my husband and this med student, 25 female. She claimed she'd seen both of them give yearning looks to each other. She said that she's known my husband for so long, and she'd never seen him talk to any other woman like this, that he'd been so aloof around women all these years, but it's just different with this one girl. At that moment, I had laughed at her face. I remember telling her that she's jumping to conclusions based on these supposed yearning looks. That's why I didn't tell you before, she had said. I was confused too. It's not like he goes out of his way to talk to her, but whenever they do talk, it's like watching a slow burn romance movie. She looks at him like he's Brad Pitt and he looks at her the way he used to look at you. I remember the exact words because they sting. Internally I was breaking down, externally I just smiled and told her that she's probably overthinking. That night, I casually mentioned this to my husband. I was laughing at the absurdity, and I expected him to join in and deny the wild possibility that he's in love with a student. But he didn't. Instead he looked at me, all teary-eyed and said, I'm sorry. I can't get her out of my mind. I've tried, trust me. I should have told you sooner. But I thought I could save our relationship. I really wanted to. I asked him if he'd cheated on me. He said no. He said he didn't even talk to her. Nor did they have any contact outside of college, and that he completely understood how morally depraved it is to try and pursue a relationship with a student. She wrote him a letter about a year back, confessing her love for him, and he had told her that even though he was into her, nothing would come out of it. Apparently that was when the yearning looks had started. I honestly don't remember how I reacted then. I think I just started packing and came to live with my parents along with my daughter. I've been living with my parents since then. Half of me wanted him to come and beg for forgiveness. But he never did. He comes by sometimes to spend time with our daughter, but that's it. He never talks about the elephant in the room, nor do I bring it up. I keep checking that girl's social media. She's insanely beautiful, almost doll-like, and intelligent. I can't help but think that someone like him should be with someone like her. He's always been very good looking and I'm more of a plain Jane. She's Meredith to Derek. I don't know what to do. What do I even tell people? I don't even know who I am without him. Some part of me still wants him to come back. Edit. I've decided to talk to him. I know I've been avoiding this for months, but after reading all the responses, I feel it's time I rip that band-aid out. I'm going over to our house. I'll update on what happens. Too long. Didn't read. Husband just admitted that he's in love with this young woman who is also his student. She loves him too. Relevant comments Moss Valley. So he didn't actually cheat? He has a crush? If I understand that right, he hasn't betrayed you yet. Crushes sometimes happen that don't mean the relationship is over. Get therapy with him. OP answer. I mean, cheating for me isn't just physical. He's had crushes in the past and I've had crushes in the past, but we'd always been upfront and then laughed about it. This one feels like a betrayal because he was attracted to someone for more than a year. This someone gave him a freaking love letter, he told her that he's attracted to her, and not once did he mention it to me. That's a huge breach of trust for me and I don't think I can look past it. OP answer. Added more about her friend Sarah and what she observed. I know. He said he entirely stopped interacting with her after the letter incident. It does seem absurd, but even my friend Sarah corroborated this. She said he never went out of his way to talk to her before, and then almost entirely stopped talking. Given that Sarah and him are in the same department 24/7, and that she noticed something as small as them giving each other looks, I'm sure she would have noticed anything out of the ordinary. I've had access to his phone and his passwords throughout, and he wasn't texting or calling her either. That's why this feels weird laughing out loud. Update. For those who don't want to read the boring details. In short, I have decided to go ahead with the divorce. Long story. The day I made the post, I met up with Sarah for dinner. I thanked her for telling me about my husband and the student, and also for being such a good friend. I asked her about my husband. She said there's nothing unusual. He's been a bit withdrawn and aloof with everyone lately, but that's about it. Yesterday I went over to my house unannounced. He was there alone in his office. I told him I wanted to talk. He said he'll explain everything. So apparently this woman has had a crush on him for 2 years, her friends ship her with him. She would stare at him during her rotations, and would blush whenever he looked or talked to her. Back then, he didn't think much of it. Many girls have had crushes on him and he always ignored them. About 1.5 years back, they were in the same research group thing. I don't know how this works, but there were 5-6 people along with these two. Because of this they had to spend some time together working, and it was then that he started noticing her. He went into detail about how he was impressed with her intelligence blah 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 and her beauty blah blah blah. The moment he realized that he had a crush on her, he dropped out of the research thing. This was a year ago. Few weeks later she gave him the letter confessing that she has feelings for him. The first thing he told her after reading it was, "You can get into trouble because of this." She didn't care, she wanted an answer. "Is it all in my head?" she had asked, to which he replied with, "It's not just in your head, but nothing can come out of it. I hope you understand." That was the last time they interacted. According to him, the yearning looks Sarah described were more of awkward eye contacts than anything else. He told me that even though he is still attracted to her, he has no intention of pursuing any sort of relationship with her regardless of whether we stay together or not. He said he's willing to change his job and go to therapy. I told him to give me some time to think about it. To sum up. 1. This has been going on for 3 years. Not once did he mention anything to me. 2. The student and him spent a considerable amount of time last year working on the research. 3. He told her he liked her back lol. 4. He's still very much attracted to her and that's why I've decided to go ahead with a divorce. I don't think I can trust this man again. And a relationship without trust isn't something I am interested in. I've told my parents about it. They're not exactly on board but they're still supportive. I've also contacted my lawyer about the same. It's going to be a long process I believe. That's it. I believe this is my last update. Too long. Didn't read. He's still attracted to her. I won't ever trust him again. We're getting a divorce. Relevant comments. Chance. Reason 6617. It's a crush. He is not in love. OP answer. That doesn't matter. He crossed a line he shouldn't have by telling her he likes her. This is not an exit. Literally. I can't believe these comments. He's gushing about her beauty and intelligence. He told her the feeling was mutual? He could have easily denied it to her and then kept his distance, but he liked the attention. OP answer. I mean, to be fair to him, he wasn't exactly gushing about her. I kept asking and he kept answering. Deal breaker for me was him telling her the feeling is mutual. All but look Lamau these dumbass comments. You too hasty, it's a cruise, chill. Like Stafu, the man literally said, I can't get her out of my head. If he was committed to his wife he would have changed job proactively. Not wait until now. He let it develop to a point he can't take his mind off of her and y'all saying it's no big deal. You guys obviously never had a real relationship. OP answer. He said he didn't change his job earlier because quote, I'm a doctor and there are people counting on me. I couldn't just walk out on them one day. He said he's willing to change his job if that's what it takes to make you stay. New update. For context, my ex-husband is a doctor and he was in love with his student for years. She was into him too and wrote him a love letter, etc. When I confronted him, he told me it was a crush and that he put a stop to it as soon as he could, and that nothing physical ever happened, but the damage was done. You can read the posts on my account if you're interested, but that's the gist. Nothing more there. So I decided to take our daughter and permanently move to my parents' house. We're in the middle of separating now. A lot of people have told me to forgive him, and I've myself debated if I'm taking the correct step or not. But the trust is gone, and I don't think I want to be in a relationship with someone like him. It's taking a lot of strength to do this. I have lost all self-esteem. Fact is that I was always insecure of how my ex was way above my league, about how I was lucky to have him, how people often said he could have done so much better. Over the years my insecurities had disappeared. Now it's all back. He's attracted to someone so beautiful, so incredibly intelligent. And obviously she's also into him. I keep looking at her social media all the time, obsessing over her. There was an Instagram story she uploaded where she was with my ex-husband and a few others, and it felt like someone stabbed me in the heart. He looked happy, and he'd never looked that happy in years. I got tired of being pathetic and even complained to the hospital management about the inappropriate relationship between her and my ex. All I got in response was that they can't take any steps without concrete proof. Now my sad ass wants to snitch about her to her parents. To get her in trouble. To make her suffer. I know this is unhealthy. I'm in therapy, but IDK, I don't think I'm healing. I hate that I have to be sad and heartbroken over that man and he doesn't seem to care. He stopped coming to visit our daughter too. I wish he would have cared. I wish he would have fought for me. I wish he would have not tossed aside our decade-long relationship for her. I hate this. I hate everything. Relevant comments. Mayor Charles Coulon. If you wanted to go full petty, you could put them to her training program. Medical schools and teaching institutions frown on faculty-learner romantic relationships and consider it an abuse of power. Your husband likely had to formally evaluate her and their affair, even emotional, would tip the fairness of those evals compared to the other students. I have seen married doctors fired for this kind of behavior. Also tell her parents. She sure as shit didn't mind hurting you or your daughter. Don't roll over because of a misplaced sense of loyalty to your D-bag ex. OP answer. I did reach out to her training program. They basically told me that they can only take steps if I have any tangible proof. Which I don't. I asked my friend Sarah, who works in the same department as him, to also complain, but she's not keen on the idea. IDKY. Final comment from OP. I feel like I've already wasted so many years on him. We met when we were 20. I thought I knew him so well, but now it's like I didn't know him at all. I don't understand what's changed. TBH. He's a very good-looking guy. All throughout our relationship there have been many girls who had crushes on him. He used to be so chill about all of it. Never made me feel insecure. Never lost his mind like this. IDK. What's happened honestly? Does the ex FaceTime or contact the daughter? It's a 1-hour flight. He does FaceTime with her daily, but he won't do it if I'm in the room. So he does it when my dad is looking after her. He's not reached out about alone time. He's only said he's waiting for the court orders regarding the custody. He doesn't want to see me at all. We had a big fight after I reported him and that girl to her college, and he said it's not correct for our daughter to see us fighting like that again, so he's not gonna visit. My husband is in love with his student. He is a piece of trash, and I have no fucking idea what to do. New update. My parents are making me give up my baby for adoption. I'm heartbroken and unsure of what to do next. They've left me with no choice. Plus new update. I'm 16 years old. I got pregnant by somebody I work with. He's 18 and is about to graduate high school. He's planning to join the military after he graduates. He's not my boyfriend. We were never in a relationship like that. I mean, I wish he was, but he doesn't seem interested in that. We're friends. He flirts with me. I lost my virginity to him. He didn't force me or anything like that. I've had sex with him multiple times. I'm 15 weeks pregnant now. Everyone knows. Well, not everyone, because I'm still hiding it from a lot of people. But he knows, and my parents know. I'm embarrassed by it. I feel like an idiot. Like a joke. Like trash. I just wish I could hide until after the baby's born. I want to never leave my house. My parents are basically forcing me to give the baby up for adoption. I live in a state with heavy abortion restrictions. It's way too late to even get one now. My parents don't believe in abortion either. They told me this is my punishment for getting pregnant, that I deserve to have to deal with being pregnant now. They've decided that I'm giving the baby away and have already set up a meeting with an adoption agency. They say they won't let me ruin my life with a baby, and they aren't going to raise my baby either. So, this is the only other option. My mom keeps saying, "You'll thank us later." I didn't get pregnant on purpose. I don't really want to be a mom right now. I turned 17 over the summer and will only be starting my junior year next year. At the same time, going through pregnancy and giving birth just to give my baby away terrifies me. I don't know if I can live with it. It literally makes me feel like I want to throw up or pass out. I feel like I have no choice but to go along with what my parents want. It's not like I could support myself, let alone me and a baby. I could never just do it on my own. I was too scared to get an abortion earlier on before I told my parents I was pregnant. I was so scared that I'd get in trouble, but now I realize that probably would have been the easiest thing for me. If anyone reading this has given a baby up for adoption and survived it, please let me know what it was like. Do you get over it? Do you really end up feeling like it's the best thing for them and you're able to just live with it? Relevant comments. OP on her parents and raising a baby by herself. I know, and I'm not suggesting that I raise a baby by myself. I know it's not really possible. I would need a lot of help, which is also not possible for me given how my parents feel about it. So at the end of the day, sure it's my choice, but I'm sort of cornered into only being able to make one choice. OP on the father, and if he knew she's pregnant, he knows I'm pregnant, and he knows my parents are essentially forcing adoption. I think he's relieved that they've decided this and are going to force me into it. I think he feels bad, but at the same time he doesn't want to be a parent, so he says stuff like, yeah, that's probably the best thing. OP on if her parents are choosing to take a legal route against the father. I'm in the US. He just turned 18 in April. They don't really want to involve him. I thought they'd confront him in person, demand to speak to his parents and stuff like that. They didn't react like that at all. I mean, they're mad at him and they blame him for this too. But they want to keep him removed from it all probably so nobody will interfere with what they've decided the plan is. IDK. Update: I'm 20 weeks pregnant now and will turn 17 within the next few weeks. My parents are still forcing me to give my baby up for adoption. We've met with an adoption agency. The adoption counselor knows that I don't want to do adoption. She asked to speak with me privately without my parents present to ask me a series of questions. I was honest and told her I didn't want to give my baby away, but I had no other choice. She seems to feel bad about it and told me that I will ultimately have to sign the papers after the baby is born. My parents cannot sign the papers. Unfortunately, without my parents' help, I have no other options. The adoption counselor talked to us about the option of my parents adopting my baby, which I don't really want either. No worries, my parents aren't interested in raising another baby. My parents want me to look at the potential families. I'm trying to look at them. It's so weird thinking that I'm looking at parents for my own baby. I know I'm not ready to be a mom, but it's still so weird. None of this feels like it's happening to me. I've talked to the baby's father. He graduated high school and goes off to basic training later this summer. I think he'd be fine with adoption. He said he doesn't really know what other options we have. We could get married since the military would at least help pay for a place to live and we'd have medical benefits, but I can't get married without parental consent. We don't love each other. What kind of marriage would that be? But it seems like the only realistic solution. I hate the idea of being married at 17 years old and to a person who doesn't genuinely want to be married to me. So then another option which still involves marriage might be for his parents to help out, even take care of the baby and let me see him or her until I'm 18 and don't need my parents' permission to get married. That doesn't really seem fair to them. He could try to object to an adoption, but it's not guaranteed that his wishes would be respected. Plus, then what happens to the baby? His parents seem like good people. I don't know them well, but I've met them. They're worried about what this will do to his future, but they told my parents they believe it should be our decision and that it's their job as parents to help us. My parents basically said it's their job to protect me and that all of the responsibility will fall on me and it'll be my life that's ruined. Our families met to discuss everything, but it was really just parents telling them what was going to happen, and that they and their son had no say. Relevant comments. OP on the ideal adoption situation she would like to see happening to the child. I don't have an ideal adoption situation right now, because I still can't accept adoption. But, probably two gay guys. It's the women in these couples I look at that seem more fake than the men for the most part. Again, I know this sounds terrible to say. Something about a lot of the women is just really rubbing me the wrong way. Maybe two lesbians, because the few lesbian couples I've seen at least seem more genuine than the straight women. Well, in some cases the gay couples could have their own biological children, even if the children didn't share both parents' DNA. But, I'm just more drawn to those couples and the profiles I've seen just seem more genuine. But yes, it feels like nobody is good enough for my baby. I acknowledge that it might not seem rational. If you've never been in the position of having to look at families, all complete strangers, to give your baby to, you probably can't fully understand. I'm allowed to be picky. This could be the biggest, most important decision in my entire life, and this is the only part of the whole adoption thing I actually have much of a say in. I'm only 20 weeks pregnant, not 38. There's no rule stating I have to have a family picked out yet. Some people take longer picking out a new car to buy. It's not as if adoption was a choice I came to on my own and even feel positive about. So yeah, looking at potential adoptive families is going to give me some feelings. As I stated, it's not a matter of thinking I can or cannot provide a better life. It's a totally bizarre and heartbreaking thing to do, to read through the profiles of families to give your baby to. And there are a ton of families. Update: having a boy. I don't know why I'm suddenly getting a ton of responses on my post from a week ago, but I figured I'd post an update because a few things have changed. I had an ultrasound on Friday and found out I'm having a baby boy. He's basically fully formed and just needs to get bigger now. I saw his head and his nose, and they even got a picture of the bottom of his 2 feet together because he was sort of sideways at first and we had to get him to move. It looked sort of like footprints. I could clearly see his little hands and everything. So I already said it in my previous post, but people are still sending my info about abortion. I know those people are trying to help, and I wish I had maybe reached out here when I first found out I was pregnant, since I didn't know I could get pills mailed to my house. I just can't get an abortion now. It's a fully formed baby. I even named him. It won't solve my problem at this point, because my biggest problem with adoption is how I'm going to live with it mentally for the rest of my life. Now that I know it's a baby moving around in there and stuff, I think I would also not mentally be able to handle an abortion now. If it was still just a lump of cells, I'd feel different, but I was too scared to do anything then. After the ultrasound, I sent the baby's father the pics. He wasn't there. My parents don't want him or his family involved now, probably because I told them he offered to marry me and they yelled at me for even considering that. I told him I can't give the baby away and asked if his parents were really serious about helping and if he'd hate me for keeping it. He said he won't hate me. I still think he'll blame me for ruining his life. He already told me he thinks adoption is the best choice. If we got married and he got caught cheating on me, even if I was okay with it, he could get in a lot of trouble. He said, "Why would I cheat on you?" He said he likes me. He wouldn't have sex with me if he didn't like me. He just didn't see the point in us being in a relationship since he was leaving anyway. It was just easier that way. The thing is, I know I'm not the only girl he's been with during that time. I'm not stupid enough to think I'm special to him or he loves me. And we both know it's sort of ridiculous to imagine us being married or acting like adults, but I guess that's what you have to do if you have a baby. I can't really imagine being a wife, but maybe it wouldn't be too bad and I'd get to move away from my parents. He said it's really weird to think about, but I have very few options and he doesn't know what else he's supposed to offer, but he's going to talk to his parents since I'm too shy to. I guess I'm assuming they were just saying it to be nice but are probably happy my parents are making me do the adoption. He says his parents aren't like that. I'm really just an inconvenience to everyone, and if I keep my baby he might end up not liking me too. I don't want to screw up my baby's life. I would do everything I could to be a good mom. I would grow up and learn how to be a wife and mom and an adult. I can't imagine living after giving my baby to somebody else. Also, if you're looking to adopt a baby, please do not message me here. Many people already have and I just delete those messages. It's creepy. If I do put my son up for adoption, it will not be to somebody I met through Reddit. I'm sorry. It's just very creepy to be messaged by adults here who want to adopt my baby. There was a comment full of hard truths left on this update. I feel horrible for you. You're in a terrible position. But your current plan does not make sense, and is not healthy for the baby. You want to marry the father who really doesn't want to be a father, because you'll have access to military housing and benefits. Being a military spouse is incredibly difficult. You will have to go where he goes, which means you will not really have support from his parents, because they will not pack up and follow you every time he is relocated. So no real support from your family or his. It will be difficult for you to build your own career because your jobs will have to be accessible to where he is based out of. He will resent you for pushing for this marriage that you admit is loveless and would be out of convenience. So your plan right now means your baby will grow up with a dad who doesn't want him, a strained and/or distant relationship with grandparents, parents with an unhealthy relationship, and financial hardship. And you will be unable to leave when things inevitably implode in your marriage, because you will not be financially independent, and you will not have any support from your family. My heart breaks for you because you clearly love the little boy already, but it's a really bad idea for everyone involved. At this point it's one of those things where love means doing what's best for him, and what's best for him is being in a stable environment. Edited to add, because I keep seeing you say you aren't sure how it works in the military, I wanted to throw out there that I do, and that I'm not saying all this because I'm just guessing. My dad was in the Army. My long-term ex was in the Army. My best friend is married to a Marine. My other best friend is married to a man in the Army. And my cousin is in the Air Force. Being a military spouse is difficult no matter what branch you are talking about, and no matter how promising the benefits sound. Most people in healthy, loving long-term relationships struggle with the hurdles that come in military relationships. Two very young people who don't love each other with a baby and financial hardship? I don't see that working. My parents are forcing me to give my baby up for adoption. I'm getting married and moving in with strangers. I'm 24 weeks pregnant now. I just turned 17. My parents have been trying to force me to give my baby boy up for adoption. I've made several posts about it. I don't want to do it. We've met with the adoption agency and looked at families. I don't think I can survive if I do it. I can't imagine my baby being out there or forever being a nuisance to an adoptive family. They said if I keep the baby, I'll be doing it all on my own. They aren't going to help me in any way. The baby's father's family is willing to help me though. The baby's father isn't my boyfriend. I know that probably sounds bad. We were never officially in a relationship, just friends really. But his parents have been a lot nicer throughout this whole thing. I don't know them well, but I'm getting to know them better now. I'm going to have to, since they are willing to help me, us. They aren't really happy that I'm pregnant, but they believe it should have been my decision about what to do about the pregnancy and eventual baby, and that as parents it's their job to help and support that decision. He's joining the military. His dad is retired military, brother is military. It is what he's always wanted to do. He just started basic training. So the plan is that we're going to get married when his family and I go out there for his graduation. Unless he changes his mind between now and then, which he might. I know he might. He hasn't said that, but I'm just scared he will. There wasn't time to do it before he left. Anyway, his tech school is over a year long, so the baby and I could move out there with him if need be. Or I can stay with his family here until he goes to his permanent duty station. That would allow me to graduate high school instead of getting a general educational development. Or at least finish the next year of high school normally. I need notarized approval to take the general educational development. At 17 and my parents refuse, but they've agreed to sign paperwork to allow me to get married. I don't understand them. I don't understand how they'd rather allow me to get married and go live with another family instead of just allowing me and my baby to live at home until I finish school and turned 18. It makes no sense. I'm not even a parent yet and I wouldn't let my 17-year-old get married. If it was between my 17-year-old getting married and moving across the country or supporting her decision to keep her baby and assisting her with finding resources to enable her to parent, I know which option I'd choose as the parent and it wouldn't be marriage. It hurts so bad. They've essentially said if he's going to marry me and his family is going to help us, then I'm not their problem now, so they'll sign off on that. They yelled at me, called me names, and locked me in my room. I could go back to being the daughter they love if I would just go along with their plan, but these things will never be the same between us again. His parents were the ones who convinced them to approve of the marriage. They met with my parents. Actually, we all met together. They've been the only ones advocating for me at all. They want me to finish school. They're going to help me arrange childcare and I'm going to move in with them before the baby is born. I will take my newborn baby home to their house. I don't even know these people. It's strange and uncomfortable for me, but I'm at the point where I can't be picky about what help is offered. Luckily the baby will be covered by his dad's insurance no matter what, and I will be covered by insurance once we're married. I'm not planning to depend on military benefits to address all our needs. It's just one piece of the puzzle. After I graduate I plan to get certified for something that has good career prospects and pays well. I'm going to be smart about what field I select, and I will use any opportunity to find grants or scholarships to help pay. My parents want me to go straight to a traditional 4-year college. I'm in honors classes now. I get really good grades. I scored very high on the PSAT. I should go to college, but I'm not really interested in any of the career fields that make college worth it. Financially, in my eyes. Unless I got a huge scholarship, I'd be paying mostly with student loans. So I'm looking into other avenues where I can enter my chosen career field much sooner and start making good money quicker without incurring so much debt. I'm really scared about everything. I've never had to do any adult things. I've blown up my whole life by getting pregnant and not going along with my parents' plan. I don't even feel like I have parents now. I never thought my family would end up this way. I sort of just want to go along with their plan because in many ways it'd be a lot easier. I could go back to my life and still be accepted by my parents and have their love and support again, but my life will never be the same. I think I'd regret taking the easy way out. I don't think adoption would be easy for me at all, but as far as day-to-day life struggles it'd probably help easier. I think I'd grow up and hate myself for doing it, and I'd never be able to undo it. What I'm doing now is the only option that I don't think I'll spend my whole life regretting. At least it won't make me feel like a coward. I still feel sick to my stomach when I think about everything that's happening. That I'm going to live with virtual strangers. That I'm going to get married. That I will eventually move across the country and be a mom and a wife before I can even legally drink alcohol. Although moving across the country doesn't sound too bad right now. I just don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm probably taking on too much, but it still makes me happier than when I thought I'd have no choice but to sign adoption papers. Relevant comments. Maroon Sweater, 123. Setting aside the fact that this nightmare situation should not exist and a shotgun contract marriage is probably not a great solution, OP won't just have access to healthcare and housing. Spouses have access to some education benefits too. Or they did in 2014. God, I'm old. Geez. honestly hoping this is a military recruiter troll or a pro-abortion troll because this poor fucking kid. Swim sweater. She'll have access to some education benefits right away, but there are people who prey on those and scam you out of them for utterly useless certificates. My heart breaks for her because she and her baby daddy are going to be miserable. I don't think she realizes how tough it's going to be financially on top of emotionally. I really hope his family helps her sign up for whatever aid they'll qualify for, like women, infants and children, and use the Army Emergency Relief Car Seat Program to get one for free. Creepy. Snow 8166. Unfortunately, there's no optimal solution for OP. Even if she decided to abort, it's too late for her now. I imagine it would be very difficult to go through pregnancy and birth, then give your own flesh and blood away to strangers. I can't blame her for not choosing that route, but it also sucks that she will need to sacrifice so much, and be in an unwanted marriage and living arrangement, in order to keep her baby. OP has to choose between two shitty choices. I messaged her about a government program that houses pregnant teens and helps them find housing arrangements and educational job opportunities, but since she's been getting a deluge of messages, she probably skipped over mine. In my humble opinion, something like that would have been a great third choice. Cathouse chicken. I think the saddest thing about something like this is the type of people to talk her out of an abortion are the same type of people that wouldn't want to allocate funds for helping a young single mother. Our anti-abortion policies, coupled with lack of public funds to help new mothers who don't get abortions, really reiterate the purpose of anti-abortion policy, and that's to create a baby pipeline for adopters.